Colonel, as we're speaking, literally as we're going live, Trump and the White House secretary said, the press secretary Caroline said that Lebanon is not included in the ceasefire. That is despite Pakistan and Iran stipulating it is included in the ceasefire since yesterday. Netanyahu bombed the hell out of Lebanon today, the worst in years, probably the worst since October 7th. At least 300 casualties and counting. And wow. Iran said they're planning to retaliate on Israel, and they've closed the Strait of Hormuz just a few minutes ago because of the Israeli strikes on Lebanon. So, and earlier today as well, just for people not keeping up, earlier today, Colonel, not sure how long ago you woke up, but earlier today, there's been attacks. Iran attacked Kuwait, Saudi, and the UAE. Heavy attacks, especially the UAE and Saudi. So I look at everything that's happening right now, and my understanding is, why did Iran attack the Gulf? Now, Iran said the UAE attacked one of their oil refineries, one of their islands. I have it written down somewhere. I'll get you the name in a second. And that's them retaliating. I find that hard to believe. The UAE alone will not do this, but I could be wrong. Who knows? But then that makes me question a lot of things about the region. But then why would Iran attack Kuwait and Saudi as well? And Saudi, they attacked one of the pipelines that is used as an alternative to the Strait of Hormuz. So it's a significant target. And in the UAE, it was the Fujairah oil refinery. So that's also one of the most significant targets in the UAE. Kuwait, I don't know what they targeted there. So my guess is, my assumption is, I'm not sure whether Iran has a faction within the IRGC that's still so pissed off at the war. They're trying to either drag the country back into the war, they don't want the war to end, or they're trying to get some last bit of revenge on the countries they thought played the biggest role in either supporting the US indirectly or directly in this war. And then you go to Israel. Israel has, you're going to talk about it now as well, is they're going to have very different objectives. You told me about it in multiple interviews. Their objectives are very different to the US. There's been reports they're not happy about the ceasefire. And that's why they struck Lebanon. Netanyahu was the first person to say Lebanon was not part of the ceasefire. I thought Trump would force him to concede, but I was surprised just a few minutes ago when the White House confirmed Netanyahu's statement against what Pakistan and Iran said. So there's a lot happening, and I'm starting to get a bit worried again.
Well, you have good reason to get worried, because this was always the first thing on my mind, is that the Iranian side wants the war to be over on their terms, because they want to prevent this from happening again. They don't want a repeat of the 12-day war where they had a ceasefire, nothing was resolved, and it just built up the clock until it was ready for another. And they've been saying that all along, that that's one of their primary objectives. Israel doesn't want it to be over at all. They just want to continue to fight no matter how long it takes to get their military objectives. Trump was the one that desperately needed this thing to be over, because it was going in a very bad direction for him on a number of fronts, politically, campaign-wise, for the coming elections, the midterm elections, and definitely economically for the United States, and a lot of pressure from even our allies in both Europe and in Asia because of the concurrent problems that the closing of the strait has had on both agricultural thing with fertilizers and, of course, with oil and natural gas. So he's the one that really, really needed this thing to be over with quick. Yeah. But there is a considerable constituency in the United States that is that are just as opposed to this war ending as they are in Israel. And you saw just last night, Jack Keane. I thought he was going to start crying when he went on Fox News to talk about this and saying, well, I don't think this was a good idea. And, I think we should be ready to have the stomach to just keep finishing this off if Iran, breaks the ceasefire or anything. I mean, he was just almost like angry and eager for anything to say. I would imagine, I haven't seen these current reports you just mentioned, was getting ready for some other shows here, but I would imagine that probably Jack Keane is probably cheering again and saying, yay, now let's use that as an excuse to restart this and go on. So this is looking like it might be stillborn in the cradle before anything even gets done, before you even get to 24 hours of this thing. And that was always going to be a big problem, because the fundamental issues that have been in place aren't even being addressed. Trump just wants it to stop. And so I think Iran was willing comments, to say maybe, but did you see as you say there, the big problem, and I'll have to look at this more detail, is if Iran has made these launches here, then that could indicate inside their camp, there's also a side that wants to have a war and one that doesn't. So that's a problem.
The Iran that we're seeing right now is so different. The entire region, we'll talk about it, is, I know we've said this a lot, is never going to look the same. The balance of power has shifted so immensely in Iran's favor against Israel. That's why I put out a post saying, Iran is the biggest winner and Lebanon is the biggest loser, because I thought Lebanon will be abandoned again. They've been struck hard and Israel will continue bombing Lebanon. So that's why I said Lebanon is the biggest loser. Then I updated it, and I have to reconsider it based on the comments in the last few minutes. But I updated it, said Israel could be the biggest loser long term because the balance power has shifted. And I remember the Iran when the leader of the what's his name, Nasrallah was killed. The Hezbollah leader was killed a couple of years ago. Iran stood back. Iran was very, very hesitant in any direct confrontation with Israel or the US since October 7th, even before that. I think the Iran now is emboldened by this win, the same way Trump was emboldened with Venezuela, and they have the right to, because they know they have leverage. And I think that level of I wouldn't say pride, but that level of success, or kind of being drunk on your own success, could lead some of the factions within Iran to want to keep the war going. And Israel's giving them a reason to. Israel has tried to kill the leader. There's been reports, according to Channel 12, they tried to kill the leader of Hezbollah again, Salem Qusaymi. I don't know his name, Qusaymi. They tried to kill him, and they failed. And they bombed Lebanon. They leveled about 30 buildings. I saw some reports. So they're giving Iran a reason to get back into this war. And I'm just really surprised, though, Colonel. Why would Trump say, and Trump and the press secretary, why would they say that Lebanon is not included in the deal? Now, Trump did then say Lebanon will be taken care of. I'm still hopeful there will be a ceasefire that includes Lebanon, because Iran won't accept to abandon Hezbollah this time around like they did before, because they know, or at least they feel, I think they know, I'd say they know because I agree with it, they have the upper hand right now.
They do, and I'll say I don't know that it's from the Iranian side. I don't know so much it's drunk on power and success as Trump was on Venezuela, as much as it is. And I have interviewed some Iranian folks who have said, and I can certainly see the justification for this. They say this is a once in a generation opportunity to actually cause problems for the United States. I can certainly see on the Iranian side, if they say, well, let's just agree to a ceasefire and just end the war here without something that turns out to be in their favor, that they can say they'll lose this leverage they have, because it would be really hard to have some kind of sustained cessation of hostilities and then try to restart it again later if things don't go. It'll be a lot more difficult. But right now they have the leverage you just described, and I can certainly imagine those inside the country saying, don't have a premature end to this unless we're going to get what we want. And so far, President Trump, and you saw Hegseth this morning, they're still talking like, hey, we won this war. It was fantastic. It was utterly defeat for the Iranian side. And so there's no evidence whatsoever that we're going to agree to any terms to end the conflict, as opposed to just a ceasefire that's going to be anything that Iran's asking for. And their 10-point plan is just almost on a different planet from the 15-point plan that we put out there. And it's hard for me to see Trump agreeing to any of those things. So I wager that there are those in Iran that says this isn't a serious opportunity to end the war. This is a bunch of nonsense. Let's keep going. That's supposition on my part. I don't know, but based on what you just reported about the fact that they have struck a number of other targets, and about the issue with Lebanon here, this just doesn't.
Lebanon's a big issue. The bombing I got. I've had, so obviously I have people in Lebanon, have people in Israel, have people, less people in Iran, but I get messages from them whenever there's attacks, like, hey, drones overhead, there might be a big attack. And I'm in a few groups as well. The messages I got today were heartbreaking. I've never seen messages come out of Lebanon like this since October 7th. It was, some of them were just hiding in their bathroom. And, this is war, but I'm talking about the scale of it. It was, I think Israel put out a statement of how many sorties they did over a 10-minute period. Let me see if I can get you the numbers, because you're the expert there, so you can tell me how extensive you think this is. All right, this is the IDF statement. In 10 minutes... All right, so in 10 minutes, the IDF completed the largest coordinated strike across Lebanon since the start of the Operation Roaring Lion. The strike targeted 100-plus Hezbollah headquarters, military arrays, and command and control centers in Beirut, Bekaa, southern Lebanon, including, and then they go through the list. Now, obviously, did they really target those? Did they target other things? Did they try to degrade Lebanon's infrastructure? I don't know. It's impossible to verify. 100-plus targets in 10 minutes. Does that sound like a lot from a military perspective for
of course it is.
Military the size of Israel?
Just based on history since 2013, without even looking at any of that stuff, I would give maybe 5% reality and truth to that there was some military headquarters. all the things that we have seen and all the images I've seen from this current Lebanon excursion, just looks like that they're just trying to do what they did in Palestine areas, in the Gaza Strip, as they're still doing in some places in the West Bank. They're just devastating it. So this claim that it's for, Hezbollah headquarters, that's for American consumption, so that the people feel good, Americans feel good about what's going on. Because if it was just, no, we're just mowing the grass and just literally just wiping out the civilian infrastructure because we're going to push it back here, even some of their supporters in America may not follow that, but evidence on the ground suggests that's exactly what's going on here. And you're talking about, militarily, the size between Hezbollah and even the Lebanese military and the Israeli military is just off the charts, and you see the result of that. I just think that this is a heinous, horrible situation here, that it looks to me like Israel's just taking full advantage of whatever this ceasefire is going on with Iran. They're like, let's refocus all of our efforts down here while we can and concentrate our fire here to get as far as we can here, but especially if President Trump may push back later. Although, based on what you said, Caroline Levitt said, maybe they have figured that out politically so that they're not going to be pushed back, which means they may push even harder militarily to gain as much territory as they can. And then, kind of like they did in Syria, they're going to take a bunch of stuff, which they, of course, will never plan to give back. And it's just another expansion of territory against any kind of international norms that exist.
Is it fair to say, let's go back a few steps, Gunnar? We didn't talk yesterday when the peace deal happened. I'm right to say Iran won this war unequivocally. Do you agree?
It's still going on, but they are definitely in the advantage here, and they are far, far more powerful now than they were before with the leverage that we had, which never would have happened had we not chosen this war. So, yes, I agree.
The U.S. I initially said the U.S. is not the biggest loser because they didn't lose much. They didn't get strike much. They lost a few munitions, a bit of money, pride. Trump lost a lot more than the U.S. as a country. But Trump did announce today that he's talking to Iran about developing a joint toll system in the Strait of Hormuz. Now, I did a post. I said, look, if he does that, I take it back. The U.S. could end up being a winner from this war, and Trump deserves a prize. I've been very critical of Trump for this war. Trump deserves a prize as the best businessman of our generation. If he manages to pull this off, first, do you think there's any chance he would pull it off? Iran would accept? And number two, would that make it a win somehow, not magically, surprisingly make it a win for the U.S.?
I would be absolutely shocked if Iran would agree to that in any way, shape, or form, that they would literally get into bed financially with the United States and they would share this. Why would they do that? They don't have to. I think President Trump is just looking for a way to try to exploit a situation like he does all the time, ignoring the fact that we have 13 bases that have been devastated. Some have been destroyed. We've lost billions of dollars of aircraft, of radars. We have damaged our standing around the world. We have taken our inventories of the most important offensive and defensive missiles that we have to just a red level that are so low we can't replace them for years. So I can't see any way that you can twist this into a victory, despite the pathetic things that I heard the Secretary of War to say this morning, trying to do that. But I doubt, I cannot imagine why Iran would ever cooperate with that when they have the power to take all of the toll kind of situation. Why would they share that with the United States?
Can you tell me your thoughts on the Hegseth comments today? I didn't listen to the entire speech. Was it just him trying to twist it into a win, which is what we all expected? That was it, talking about the military successes, how Iran begged for a ceasefire and they accepted because Iran's leadership is gone. I haven't listened to a speech because I thought there was not going to be much value in it. But is that a fair assumption of what was there?
It is, and I was prepared for my shows for the day that we already had scheduled. But the second I heard the first 60 seconds of his speech, I had to stop and do an impromptu, about a 10-minute diatribe. Probably is the best and most pleasant way to say that, just because I was incensed that he's trying to change the facts about things, trying to claim that we were successful, that we obliterated, Iran and accomplished all of our military objectives. And as I'm going to show on my show here just a little bit, I'm going to say, let's go back and look at that. What were the actual objectives that the president set on day one that you said all of which were accomplished? And of course, in that press briefing there, and this is one thing that annoys me about the American press, they're just going to be writing down what he said, and they'll go back and they'll type it out and fire it off, and it'll be a headline somewhere. This is what he said. They're not going to say, hang on, here's what you said on 28 February, and here's what exists right now. And none of those things have been accomplished. We just are begging for this thing to be over, and we're trying to put a good face on it and try to justify why 13 Americans are dead and 360 some odd are wounded, and all of our bases are in tatters, and while all of our inventories are down to nothing. Because this is the other thing. You talked about the leverage that Iran has. We are in critical condition on our, especially Tomahawks, JASSMs, and interceptor missiles, the PAC-3s, the best ones we have. We are critically low. We cannot get into a sustained war of attrition with Iran. We can't just keep going here. That's one of the reasons I was surprised that Iran agreed to this, because if they just keep going with this, they'll keep taking a lot of missiles in the teeth. And I don't know what would have happened last night at 8 p.m. had they not agreed to this. But in the longer term, that would put them in the driver's seat, because we're going to run out of missiles at some point. Now, it could be that there was a risk that Trump may advance to nuclear weapons. And I still think that, based on his comment yesterday morning, that was on his mind, because you cannot destroy a civilization that can never rise again with conventional weapons. You just can't do it. So I think that maybe was in his mind, and perhaps he communicated that to Iran and said, let's just have a face-saving deal here. Let's have a negotiated settlement, and then I won't do it. I don't know. I'd love to find out what happened behind the scenes, because it almost doesn't make sense for Iran to have agreed to that, given their leverage. So I don't know where it's going to go from here, but it's a problem.
I'll give you my thoughts. And as you saw me look down while you were speaking as well, Iran, I told you they have the upper hand. They will not abandon Hezbollah, and this is happening. Iran has informed regional mediators that it will only participate in talks with US officials in Pakistan if a ceasefire is in place in Lebanon, according to the Wall Street Journal. So they abandoned Hezbollah about a year and a half ago when Nasrallah was killed. They did not come to their support. One could see it as abandonment, maybe not, maybe a strategic restraint. I don't know, but it looked like they abandoned Hezbollah. Hezbollah was getting pummeled on a regular basis. Iran was standing back. I think they did abandon them, because Iran did not want to confront Israel or the US, but mainly Israel. They did not want another war. They're not abandoning Hezbollah right now. They're standing their ground, because again, they have the upper hand and they're using that card. To be honest, rightly so. They're ending the war. I don't like Hezbollah. I want them gone, but they're ending the war in Lebanon, and they know from a strategic perspective, they do have the upper hand. Now, in terms of I got a lot of slack for my thoughts on Trump's comments. I said, as crazy as they were, and I don't think any leader should talk like this, I also said that this is Trump's way. You know, when Trump talked about Canada being a new American state, well, the only way for Canada to become a US state, because they're not going to vote for it, is militarily. It's a war with Canada, war with an ally. That's unheard of. That's unacceptable. But I knew it's just rhetoric. And I felt the same thing with the posts. So everyone was losing their mind when those posts came out. Tucker Carlson probably more than anyone. And even members of Congress, people were genuinely concerned. There was a report in The Guardian that Trump advisors were worried about him using a nuclear weapon and he might deliver on his threats. So obviously they know more than I, but my initial instinct was, and I put out a post saying, the more Trump talks like this, the more confident I am there will be a ceasefire, because it showed for me, some people call it desperation, but I saw it as Trump has already made up his mind. He wants to end the war. He's just going to talk, he's going to say as many extreme things as possible to try to get as many concessions as possible, because he made up his mind to, the day he started posting these things 2-3 days ago is the day he decided, I believe, I don't know that for a fact, obviously, he decided already he's going to off-ramp from this war. And the other part is, why did Iran accept? Iran got everything they wanted. Iran's getting their sanctions lifted. Iran is... what else are they getting? Reparations.
Well, on that a little bit. Iran hasn't gotten anything yet. They're just a conversation. They haven't gotten anything yet. And the risk with what you're talking about,
if they get the point, if they get the plan. So yeah, they haven't got
it. I mean, that's the massive big if. But then here's the problem with that. By Trump saying those kinds of things, that's not just for leverage or so. Because what happens if Iran concludes the same thing? That's just rhetoric. I don't believe that at all. And then they don't do it. And now maybe they do it even now in the present. If they go back on this issue with Hezbollah, if that ends up throwing things off and they go back to the fight. And so he undermines what he just said, which then will undermine everything Hegseth said this morning. Now then he's going to be put back in a position. Are you going to make good on that? That's the risk of it. Maybe he did mean it that way, but the problem is he has the capacity, meaning Trump, to actually do that, and to play around with something that's literally existential like that is incredibly risky and foolish.
I don't think so. My thought was Trump can always seek an off ramp without actually getting an off ramp. Iran didn't need to give him an off ramp. He could just literally walk away, call it a win, and Iran would stop striking the US if the US stopped striking them, and let everyone else clean up the mess. And based on this plan, I think this is what he's doing. He got nothing out of this new deal. There is, unless he gets the joint toll booth, then hats off to him. I don't know how the hell he would have done it. But putting that aside, assuming that this is not going to happen, there is nothing else that the US got except losing a lot of munitions and political support, pissing off allies. There is no win here. So that's why I think Iran is, I don't know what Israel's role is going to be in this. It's probably another wild card that we've got to discuss. But I personally think Israel's leverage in the region is almost completely gone. I don't think they have, not completely gone, but it's not going to be the same as it was before. I don't think they'll ever have the leverage that they had in the last, let's say, even 15, 20 years.
Right.
If this deal that we've seen becomes reality on Friday.
Okay. And let me touch on that separately. Let me go back to your previous point there. If Trump just does the whole walk away thing, or if this ceasefire doesn't turn into something he wants. I mean, they have set out some pretty ambitious claims that they're never going to have a nuclear weapon. We're going to get the reprocessed material back, that the Strait of Hormuz is going to be completely open and free with no restrictions, et cetera. If those things don't happen, then the walk away, everyone will see it's a failure. You can't even tell your supporters that that's a failure. So there is still a requirement for Iran to participate in that. He can't just walk away. And so he set himself up in a position here with Iran, with the leverage that you previously described, and I certainly agree with. They have to concede to that. And for them to concede to it, they're going to have to get something pretty big. And I don't know what that would be right now, but those 10 points were a pretty good, I guess, start point. That's what they were talking about. But now,
if they get the straight, it's an unequivocal win. They don't need anything else. Do you agree?
Iran? If Iran keeps control of the strait, is that what you ask?
Yes, if they control the strait, that's more. Yeah. You know how in a war, usually when one of the sides managed to take some territory from the other side, that's any territory. If they, after world wars, after every major war, the winner usually takes the territory of the other countries that lost the war. I look at this as a level up from that. The Strait of Hormuz is worth more than any territory in the region anyone could actually hope for. So if Iran's able to, without even any permission, if Iran remains as it is with their ballistic missile program, they de facto control the Strait of Hormuz. There is no country in the region that can. If the US could not open the straits, no one can. So one could say it's already a fact. Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz for the foreseeable future.
Which is why I think no way. Why would they ever share the toll booth wealth with them? Yeah, I agree. If they retain control, if they retain their nuclear reprocessed material, and if they retain their missile power, and they retain the regime itself remains in control, then they have definitely won, no matter what else may happen. I agree with that.
Yeah, you asked me why would they allow to share the toll booth. I'll give you a theory. Let me know what you think. Sanctions. Okay. Sanctions has been, I said Iran has been in war for decades because of these sanctions. Right. Because if they go back to the status quo, Iran will be printing money from the Strait, but they'll be still hemorrhaging money because of the sanctions. They cannot flourish as they would like to see in the Gulf. If they want to be like the Gulf, they need to have these sanctions removed. So if they do a deal with the US where, let's say, Iran takes 60% of the fees from the Strait of Hormuz, 30% for Oman, and then 10% for the US in return for the sanctions to be lifted, Trump might do that. All that Trump needs is some access to the Strait of Hormuz, even if it's a tiny percentage of the toll booth numbers, because he can call it a win, and no nuclear program, because otherwise there's no way he can paint this into a win, even to the most diehard fan, if Iran maintains their nuclear program. But trust me, there's some diehard fans of every leader, including Trump, where they spamming me in the comments saying, Mario, what do you mean he lost? What are they saying? Khamenei is dead. What are you talking about? All the leaders are dead in Iran. They don't understand that means nothing for the country. These are all replaceable people. The same way a president in the US is replaced every 4 years. Put that aside. But I think even those diehard supporters, Colonel, they cannot twist a nuclear Iran as a win. I think that's where their mind just cannot process it. Confirmation bias has a limit.
Well, and look, from Iran's point of view, what you just described there is probably would have to be just astronomically successful if they had a deal where they would share the wealth in the percentages you just talked about there. and get sanctions relief, I mean, that would be a profound win that no one could explain away. The problem for Trump is, though, that in order to get that, if he has to drop those sanctions, his supporters will lose their minds. I don't know that he can dropping the sanctions off while the reprocessed material remains in Iranian hands. I don't know that even his biggest supporters can file that. And I guarantee you, the likes of Jack Keane, Lindsey Graham, and Keith Kellogg, and some of these others, they're not going to go over well with that. Put Mike Pompeo on that. They will rail against that. So I don't know that he has the political room to agree to what you say there, even though if that would get the Strait open and the war open, I'd be for it. But it's just hard for me to see how he does it.
Have you seen the comments by Mark Levine? He lost his mind, Colonel. I was playing his video yesterday. Me, Larry, and
I think he did Larry cry on air.
He was so upset. He was so upset. Are you worried about Israel? There's a lot of people saying Israel's sabotaging the ceasefire. My stance initially, I'm questioning it, but I still stand by it. They don't have leverage. There's no way they're going to be able to suck Trump back into this. I don't even think they're the reason that Trump started this war. I think they had some sort of influence, but they're not the reason for it. But I don't think they can drag him into it. I really don't. I think that in the next couple of days, we're going to find out if the ceasefire breaks because Trump did not convince Netanyahu, did not force Netanyahu to stop his attacks on Lebanon. Then I question my position completely. Then I'd be like, all right, maybe Israel has a lot more leverage on the U.S. than I thought. But I genuinely...
Or it's not so much that they have leverage, it's just that they are unwilling to acknowledge reality. And then they will, even if it sabotages their own interests, will just keep going down this path. And I'm not in anywhere near as sanguine about this as you are. I think that they will absolutely sabotage this. They've sabotaged so many other things. Why would they stop now? Because they just have this obsessive lust to go forward, even though that I can paint 100 reasons why strategically that it's against their interest to go down this path. But man, they've done a lot of things that are against their interest, and they're paying a price for it. But they just have this myopic obsession with conquering stuff and thinking they're going to take everything by force. And all, in my view, is they are digging a deeper and deeper and deeper strategic hole that is planting bitter seeds that are going to come up in the future already because of all the things they've been doing. And this living in war, it's going to have a bitter fruit come up out of the ground at some point. And I think that they're already getting beyond the extension of their capabilities and straining their own population and military. They just can't win this. But I don't think that they have come to at least many in Israel have not yet come to the grasp to realize just how bad their position is and how if they keep going out over their skis, at some point they're going to fall off the edge.
You said they will sabotage. Do you mean they will try to sabotage or successfully manage to sabotage? Because I know they will try to sabotage, that's guaranteed. But do you think
the reason why I say try, I think that they will succeed, because for them to fail, to try and sabotage and fail, that would require President Trump to do something he has never done. And that is to say, all right, publicly, Israel, you're on your own. You go down that path, you're on your own. I'm not going to go down. If you don't support what I'm doing here, then you're on your own. You want to do that? You're a sovereign country. You can. Good luck to you. We're not going to go down that path. And then say, that's it. We're stopping. No more missiles, no more of this, because we're not fighting that war anymore. That would require him to do that if push comes to shove. And I think that they correctly, meaning Israel, correctly recognizes Trump will never do that. So I think that they feel the freedom to do whatever it takes to sabotage any of this to keep it going. I mean, that's my guess. We'll see what happens.
Do you think the ceasefire will last? We didn't even ask that question. Do you think we'll see this war continuing next? Oh,
no,
wow.
I mean, the things you talked about when we just came on the air here that I hadn't even seen yet. I mean, that's just
I'm
the
worried.
first hours.
So is it possible that, when a war ends, there's always a bit of kind of last back and forth between the two countries? We saw that after the 12-day war as well. Could that be a bit of that? Because Israel's not attacking Iran at all. That's a positive development. Iran attacked the Gulf. That's a weird one. I don't think Mushtaba gave an order to his commanders yesterday. He put out a statement on national TV to stop the attacks. So I don't know if these are some lone wolf attacks. And on the Lebanon front, Trump did say he'll clean up Lebanon. He'll sort out Lebanon. So I think that a deal would be found. So if I'm just giving you that context. And one more piece of context as well. Iran is claiming that the UAE attacked, I don't know if I said that to you, the oil refinery.
Yeah.
I did say that to you, yeah. Which, again, I don't know if that's true. That just sounds a bit too far-fetched. But now that I've given you the context that Iran hasn't attacked Israel, Israel has downed an Iranian drone 2-3 hours ago, by the way. Iran has downed an Israeli drone 2-3 hours ago. But Iran and Israel have not hit each other at all. So that's very different to the 12-day war when they continued attacking each other for a while. It's only Iran, a few attacks on the Gulf, 3 Gulf nations, which seems like revenge, and Lebanon, which is last sticking point. Do you still stand by your position?
Yeah, it's too early to tell. I mean, I don't. You asked me if I think it's going to. I don't think it's going to. I hope that it does. But I mean, like right before yesterday, right before the announced ceasefire, it was either the U.S. and Israel, or maybe it was just Israel. I can't remember. It hit 2 facilities, an aluminum plant, and I can't remember what the other one was in Iran. Right before this thing happened, right before it was announced. So obviously they knew that. And so I was thinking at the time, you're going to hit these really important facilities and then think that Iran's not going to do anything in retaliation. So maybe they did something after that. Perhaps some of this others, it could be bleed over. Who can say? I just think that, I mean, look at Israel's history with keeping ceasefires. They keep them to the minute that it benefits them, and the second that it doesn't, they don't even hesitate to break it. Stuff that we've helped negotiate, like with Hamas or even Lebanon in the past. So given their history, I don't expect this to happen. And there's too many people that are against it in Iran, in the United States, and in Israel that don't want this war to end for various reasons. So it's just, I hope that it does, Mario. I just don't think that it will.
Do you commend Trump on walking away?
I think it's the best thing in a bad situation.
You know, there's a lot of pressure on him, as you know. You've mentioned a few names. There's a lot of people around him that want this war to continue.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm for anything that's going to get out of this. I've been said, hey, Taco Tuesday, man, he walked away from it. Good, at least in terms of that, because no one, at least the number went down, and no one was being killed yesterday. We didn't have this massive attack on all their energy system and bridges in Iran like he was threatening, and therefore they didn't have the requirement to have this massive counterstrike against all the other regions. So we dodged a bullet then. My gut tells me that that's just a temporary pause and that we're going to be back in this danger zone here. But we'll see. There's just too many people that want the war to go on, in my view.
Colonel, always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us the brief.
Always my pleasure, Mario. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, sir. Just for the audience, we've got a few guests joining on another marathon. I think we're doing a few interviews without a break. We've got Malcolm Nance joining in a bit. We've also got, let me get you the exact names. You know a lot of the guests, and I'll give you a brief on the latest updates as well as we wait for our next guest to join. Let me get you the names. We have Malcolm Nance. We have Eylon Levy from Israel, because I'm probably going to have a pretty heated conversation with him on the developments that happened just now in Lebanon. There's already 89 deaths that were reported by the Lebanese Health Ministry, about 800 injuries. Multiple buildings were flattened. Even a funeral was struck. So I'm pretty upset by this development. I'm upset, as you know, everyone. I'm upset at Hezbollah for dragging Lebanon into this war. For Iran, I'm not really upset at Iran. They've done what's best for them. They managed to successfully drag Lebanon into the war. Their job is to take care of their country. And I'm obviously pissed off at Israel for, it's not about striking Hezbollah. It's about the ferociousness of these strikes, the targets that were struck. A funeral was struck as well. These are not military targets. So I'll be talking to Eylon Levy about this. Then I've got a conversation with Trita Parsi, who you all know is very critical of this war. Someone who was critical of the regime. I've been interviewing him for months now, as you guys know. Critical of the regime, but also critical of the war. I've got a call right after Trita. Would be doing an interview with Dimitri, who was in Iran. And if you remember the story, guys, you should definitely check out that interview. As he was going to different locations in Iran, those locations were struck literally as you left him. So he would visit location, even the Minab school, the school that was struck by the US. He left it. A few hours later, that school was struck by a drone. He went to another location, him and other journalists. They left it. It was struck by a drone, and they believe it was either the US and Israel giving them a warning to stop their coverage. We had him on the show. It was a great episode. We're going to have him back on the show. Then we have our regular Malcolm Nance, who we chatted to yesterday for about 1-2 hours when the we've got Jonathan Conricus as well when the ceasefire was announced. We've got Anthony, a new guest. We've got Kareem from Lebanon later tonight, and lastly we've got Jonathan Conricus. Probably going to be another heated conversation as well, focusing on what's happening in Lebanon. Just to kind of give you guys an update. Let me see if there's an all right, sending an update to my team to give me an information on the next guest and what time they're coming in. It should be in the next few minutes. So the Lebanese Ministry of Health reports the death toll so far from Israeli strikes is 87 and over 700 injured. Now, will there be a ceasefire in Lebanon? Now, I was surprised by Trump's comments, as I said to the colonel. Let me read out the exact comments. I'll kind of give you guys a brief on the news. Caroline Levitt said that Lebanon is not part of the ceasefire agreement with Iran. But Iran has responded, and Trump made similar comments, I think, to PBS. Iran has responded. They said they've told regional mediators that the upcoming Pakistan meeting is conditional on a ceasefire in Lebanon. So if you guys remember, and I mentioned it again briefly earlier, when Nasrallah was killed, everyone was talking about how Iran abandoned Hezbollah because Iran did not want confrontation with Israel. Now, that might be false. Again, there could have been very strategic restraint on behalf of Iran, but Hezbollah got a beating. But it seems since then, Iran has heavily managed to find some way to rearm Hezbollah. I'm not sure whether it's through Syria, through the sea. A lot of people tell me a lot of the routes through Syria that were used to arm Hezbollah beforehand, they're still open now. The Syrian military, al-Shara, doesn't have the capabilities, maybe not the willingness, but the capabilities to arm Hezbollah. I think it's more capabilities than willingness. Al-Shara is not a fan of Hezbollah, as you should probably know. So Iran was able to arm Hezbollah. They dragged Hezbollah into this war. But because of the leverage that Iran has, because of the control of the Straits that they have, because they saw Trump capitulate, they know that they can pressure Israel. They know Israel won't strike Iran. There's a card that Israel and the US, but mainly Israel had. It's a card that mainly Israel had. They could always play that card to Iran. Whenever things escalated, we're going to strike you. We have air superiority. And if you strike us back hard, the US is joining us. So that was a card that Israel always had. And that kept Iran at bay. That card is gone. So Iran knows that card is gone. Iran knows Trump and probably the next president as well, but at least for now, Trump will not go back into this war, will not get the country stuck in a war. Probably no country will. Iran has the best deterrent. Medvedev said that yesterday. Iran doesn't need a nuclear weapon. Their best deterrent is the ability to close the Strait of Hormuz. Because of that deterrent, Iran has no incentive to fold in any way to Israel. So that puts Hezbollah in a very strong position. I'm not saying it puts Lebanon in a strong position. Lebanon could continue being the location for proxy conflicts, because when you have two superpowers, Iran, Israel, that cannot fight directly, it's like the US and Russia. They can't fight directly. China and the US, they can't fight directly. List goes on. So whenever you have superpowers that cannot fight directly, Saudi, Iran, what happens is they fight through proxies in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Syria, Russia, US, in Ukraine. So Lebanon is not in a good place. The proxy wars will continue there because Iran and Israel can't, both of them don't want a direct conflict again. And Israel is the one that suffers the most. But at least in the short term, one thing a lot of people are worried about, Israel annexing Lebanese territory or occupying Lebanese territory for another 10, 20 years, as we saw in the 80s, 90s. That's out of the question because Iran won't let it happen. Hezbollah has put up a very strong fight against Iran, against Israel. And now that Iran is standing by their side, Israel has no choice. Wall Street Journal put out a report as well. Israel was informed at the last minute about the US-Iran ceasefire and was not happy with the limited consultation. I'm not surprised. I really expected Trump to have a lot more leverage over Israel. Many of you might disagree. I genuinely don't think Netanyahu has as much leverage as you guys, some of you think Israel has. Trump called Netanyahu shortly before the announcement. So he did tell him beforehand. That's why we saw Israel strike some strategic targets in Iran right before the ceasefire was announced. Number two, Israel agreed to join the deal, but strongly objected to including Lebanon. Israel now says the ceasefire applies only to Iran. And the audacity on the Israeli side, Netanyahu put out a statement even before Trump or Caroline Levitt, even before any of them spoke on this. Israel put out a statement, Netanyahu himself, his office put out a statement saying Lebanon is not part of this deal. That's a very disrespectful thing to do to Trump. So that was a surprise to me. And I don't think Trump would be happy for it. He should wait before making a speech like this. And they struck Lebanon. They pummeled Lebanon before Trump even woke up. A lot of people are not talking about this. The atrocities they committed, I'm really pissed off at them. The atrocities they committed today was before Trump woke up. So it's a post about it after the interviews as well. I'll read out a few more bits and pieces in terms of news. There's a lot happening right now before we get our next guest joining in a few minutes. I think it's Trita, Parsi, or Eylon, Levy. Helicopters landing at the US Embassy in Baghdad. We've got a Black Hawk helicopter right now landing in Baghdad. Doesn't mean much. Netanyahu is calling an emergency security cabinet meeting today at 2:30 p.m. They will discuss the Iran ceasefire. I think their opinion doesn't really matter. Again, I repeat, I've always been in the camp that Israel has too much influence over the US, but they don't control the US. They have, in terms of the Middle East, they have way too much influence, especially after October 7th and the successes they had against Hezbollah, against Iran, against Hamas, less so against Hamas, but Hezbollah and Iran. That's shifted. As I've said, the balance of power has shifted. So that security meeting, cabinet meeting, It's theatrics. The decision will be with Trump and with Iran, not with Israel. It's Trump and Iran that will decide what happens next. Israel's out of question. I could change my mind if things develop in the next few days, in the next few minutes, really. A bit of an update on the negotiations. Pakistan was the main broker behind the 2-week US-Iran ceasefire. One, Pakistan's military chief, Asim Munir, who doesn't like me at all. I don't even go to Pakistan because of the security risks. I've been very critical of Asim Munir because I support Imran Khan and been supporting him and his family for a long time. I don't like what Asim Munir is doing for Imran Khan, but very successful brokering of a peace deal here. I don't think a lot of people are giving Pakistan a lot of credit for this, and the Financial Times, I'll continue reading this, they're giving them a lot of credit. I disagree. I think Pakistan they've done what the US asked them to do. Trump, as I said earlier, decided for the ceasefire days ago, guys. Speculating, this is not fact. He decided days ago. As soon as his rhetoric started seeming crazy to some people, that's him doing what a businessman would do. When you make a decision what type of deal you want, you start going to the extreme, push everything, push the limit as much as possible, and then accept whatever you get because you've decided you want to take the deal. So this is what Trump did. He decided, look, I can't afford this war to continue. The global economy is going to crash. The polls are killing me. By the way, the polls till now, the polls are actually worse, not the polls. The betting platforms are worse for Trump in terms of the Republicans losing the midterms. They got worse after the peace deal. I'll check what happened since. But when I checked right after the ceasefire, the odds of a Democratic sweep, the Democrats having control of the Senate, increased to 52%. Let me see what it is now. So right now, it's still the same, 53%. So it was 51% Democrats, 49% Republicans. Now it's 47. So it's leaned further after the ceasefire, slightly further in favor of the Democrats. So because people watching this know that ceasefire is going to be very difficult for Trump. It's like Trump ending the war, I thought would boost him politically, but not at these terms. Anyone that is not completely, blindly following Trump, which there's a lot of those, and that's fine, they have their own opinions, can see through this deal and knows, a lot of voices around Trump knows this deal is heavily in Iran's favor. Trump does not control the Strait of Hormuz. He's been posting about controlling their oil. He does not control their oil. Iran is saying they're going to keep enriching uranium. Iran is going to have a toll booth at the Strait of Hormuz. It's a complete opposite. Israel's been put in its place. All the pro-Israeli voters in the US know this. Israel's pissed right now. What else is there? He killed Khamenei. The new leader's Khamenei. It's like everything went bad. What else? What else did he say he's going to get? Regime change didn't happen, even though he's saying that regime change happened. A lot of US casualties. Nothing went according to, not planned, but according to the promises that Trump made. Let me go back to the Financial Times story of how the deal happened. Pakistan was the main broker. The Asim Munir led weeks of secret back-channel talks between Washington and Tehran. The deal was a temporary ceasefire in exchange for reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Surprise, surprise, the Strait of Hormuz is not reopened. It's partially opened by Iran based on who pays them. Trump escalated threats while the White House pushed Pakistan to convince Iran. So that's the strategy I was telling you guys about. As Trump was escalating, behind the scenes, there were negotiations. Now, I knew about this as well. As I said, we broke the story 40 whatever minutes ago before anyone knew about the ceasefire. I posted about it, and then 48 minutes later, Trump posted about it because I knew about these negotiations for a while. I didn't know there'll be a ceasefire. I thought there'll be a delay, but definitely not a ceasefire. I was surprised by that when I got the text about it. So that's why I'm not that critical as much as the Colonel and most other people, really, and a lot of you guys, about the statements that Trump made. I thought it was a negotiating tactic. Trita Parsi will be joining us very shortly in about 12 minutes, potentially earlier. I think Prime Minister Sharif, the Prime Minister of Pakistan. Now in Pakistan, Asim Munir is the main leader. He's the head of the military. These prime ministers under him, he's more of a similar to the president of Iran and the supreme leader kind of structure. The president does what the supreme leader tells him to do. The same thing here. Sharif publicly announced the agreement, even posted a draft version by mistake. One of Iran's key conditions, the ceasefire must also stop Israeli attacks on Lebanon, which we're seeing now that disagreement. And that's going to be that. What happens now in Lebanon is going to be very telling on who calls the shots in the Middle East. If Israel accepts a ceasefire on Lebanon, which I think they will, that is your confirmation. Now, I wouldn't say Iran is the new superpower in the Middle East, but it's proven itself as the second or third superpower in the region. There's three of them: Israel, Saudi, and Iran, in no particular order. And lastly, Iran has now agreed to send representatives to Islamabad for further talks, but that was earlier, a few minutes, about an hour ago. Iran has withdrawn that request unless attacks on Lebanon stop. Now, there's a report here. Someone had a massive short. So similar guys, I had the news less than an hour before the ceasefire happened. I could have made a lot of money if I bet on oil and all these things. People might have known well before me, and they did. And here there's a report. Someone made $174 million in pure profit by having a massive short position on oil just hours before the ceasefire was announced. Hours beforehand. Now, did that person just get lucky, or did he have inside information? My guess is on the latter. Remember, a lot of these people in the negotiations have friends, families. In the same way I got the message, other people got the message, and some people would have made money on it, especially people in a country that's not regulated. Pakistan, a lot less regulated. So I'll give you guys more updates here. Trump said the following. Now, again, we take with a grain of salt anything Trump says, because he's no longer the only one calling the shots right now. It's him and Iran both calling the shots, but not Israel. In-person talks with Iran are happening very soon, but J.D. Vance might not go. There's a question of safety and security. I don't know why J.D. Vance is not going. We'd love to get your thoughts in the comments, guys, because that's bizarre to me. Iran requested J.D. Vance because they don't trust Kushner or Witkoff. So why the hell would Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff go to that meeting? The same people that The Guardian reported British intelligence said there were Israeli assets. I don't think they were Israeli assets, but just the fact that we're called that, I don't know, qualifies them for negotiating a peace deal here. Maybe Ukraine, one obviously could question that as well. But I'd just be surprised if I don't see J.D. Vance there. Well, Trump said he's not going there. So I'd want to look into this further. I'll put a note for the team to look into it. Now, Trump said something good. He said Hezbollah and Lebanon will get taken care of too. So to me, this is him saying, guys, I'll sort Israel. Just give me till the end of the day. And I think he will. The Iranian forces put out a statement. They said, the Iranian Navy, they said the following. Now, there's really no Navy, but it's just a bunch of boats with the ability to place mines in the straits and have a few sea drones, enough to close the Strait of Hormuz. They said the following: the Iranian armed forces are now in control of the Strait of Hormuz. All vessels must obtain verbal permission from the IRGC Navy to proceed through the strait, or they will be targeted and destroyed. And I've had reports. I'm going to actually ask my team to get me those reports. But I've had reports that they're requesting payments in crypto. So I'm a crypto guy. I've got a pretty big business in that industry. So if it is requesting payments in crypto, that's great for our industry. So I'll give you guys more updates here. There's a lot happening. As we said, Levy. Oh, let me see if that's the right link. Oh, that's the right one here. All right, next. Trump, when asked by ABC News about Iran imposing tolls on the Strait of Hormuz, we're thinking of doing it as a joint venture. It's a way of securing it. It's a beautiful thing. Now, as the colonel said, he doubts this will happen. I think it could. I really think it could. Let me tell you why. All right. So I'm getting you some more information. If you see me type, just asking my team to kind of get context on different pieces of information. I'll share it with you guys because there's a lot happening. We're thinking of doing this as a joint venture. Why do I think the US might have some sort of control on the Strait of Hormuz? Very simple. Sanctions. I said it earlier. If the US lifts sanctions on Iran and Iran has control of the Strait of Hormuz, Iran's going to have one of the most beautiful economic booms one could imagine. It will be incredible for the country. The only thing missing would be the regime to start treating his people better, change his foreign policy. Hopefully, Mujtaba could be a bit different from his father, could be a bit more progressive. I'm not saying be liberal, or progressive as in do what's best for this country, not what's best ideologically. Anyways, their country, they decide whatever they want. I just think that if that happens, because Iran is a beautiful, beautiful country with so much potential, they have control of the Strait of Hormuz, they can rebuild the destruction that the US and Israel has just caused, and they could become a much bigger power. Again, they don't need nuclear weapons at all. So, and I think if the US lifts sanctions, Iran could give them a piece of the toll booth and on the Strait of Hormuz. And Trump, that would be a massive win for Trump. I don't know what that percentage would be, but even if you hate Trump, you got to admit that would be an incredible win, and you should give him his flowers. We are seeing ships in the Strait of Hormuz. I'm not in my home from Dubai, but if I was, I'll be able to see it at night, take a video for you guys from my apartment. Peace talks to start in Pakistan very soon. That came in from New York Post as well. Trump said that. Another comment here earlier by Trump. So he's flip-flopping a lot. Just shows he's very, very lost. yeah, Lebanon is not included in the deal because of Hezbollah. So this is Lebanon saying it's not, Lebanon, Trump saying it's not included, Karen Levitt saying it's not included, then Trump saying we'll take care of it. So we'll see. There's a power struggle right now between Netanyahu and Trump. I put out a statement. I said, this comes after, the comment there by Trump, I said, seems Netanyahu had more influence over Trump than I expected, and now the entire ceasefire deal is in jeopardy. Iran dragged Lebanon into this war, and now Lebanon could drag Iran back into this war. A senior Iranian official said the following: we will punish Israel in response to the crime it committed in Lebanon and the violation of the ceasefire conditions. The ceasefire includes the region, and Israel knowingly breaking its promises. Only bullets will deter it. So we could see retaliation. And guys, one thing I still cannot figure out is why the fuck did Iran attack the Gulf? I don't understand it. Why did they strike the UAE? Why did they strike Saudi? Why did they strike Kuwait after a ceasefire ended? So me and Colonel were speculating there's factions within the IRGC that don't want this war to end. Their supreme leader just got killed. They're full of anger. There might be a lot more ideological less than others that might be more pragmatic. There could be a split within Iran. There could be a split within the IRGC. And I'm not saying a major split. It could be just a bit of a power struggle. I don't expect a coup or anything like that, just to be clear. A coup would have happened during the war. That's not going to happen now. Or it could be just a bunch of commanders that are really pissed off. Or it could be from command center. Command center would be like, they might have found new information on what Saudi and the UAE were telling Trump. There's been a lot of reports that were egging Trump to attack Iran. And when Iran found that out, that they played a much bigger role in Kuwait. Kuwait was used to fire missiles at Iran. So Kuwait was pretty much involved in the war by offering this, not only the American bases, but offering their territory not only for aircraft to land, but for missiles to be fired. So that's Iran getting their more of a warning shot and getting their revenge. However, Iran did say the UAE attacked one of their islands. That's strategically very important for exporting oil, not Kargan and one of the other ones that had Iranian oil facilities and refineries. Highly doubt it, guys. The Gulf's not going to do this. The Gulf militarily, unless someone asked it to, Trump asked it to, which is there's no way it's going to happen. But militarily cannot sustain any form of conflict with Iran. The UAE wants to normalize relations with all countries, and they're trying to build their image as the Switzerland of the region, kind of the peacemaker. I could be completely wrong, because remember, there's disputed balance between Iran and the UAE, and it could be about those. Some people are saying the UAE is trying to drag Israel and Lebanon into this war. But I know from discussions I've had with officials, because I saw the report, if you remember, a few weeks ago from Jerusalem Post that the UAE was directly attacking Iran. I posted about it, but I immediately asked people in the country, I said, guys, is that true? They said no, and they were really upset. They're like, someone's trying to drag us into this war, Mario. They didn't mention Israel, but they were hinting at Israel. So the UAE is very pissed off at Israel, and I think we're going to be other Gulf countries, I think, as well. We'll see about Saudi, but I think all Gulf countries are going to move closer to Iran, even though Iran's been bombing them for weeks. I think that their relationship is going to get better after this, because they see Iran as a country, as a force that they're going to get rid of, and they see Israel as a threat. A lot of them blame Israel for this war. Remember the Al-Habtour letter should not be forgotten. He's a very wealthy person in the UAE, doesn't speak on behalf of the royal family, but is very close to them, has a lot of influence there. And he put out a letter scolding Trump and Israel for the war. So just going to give you guys an update. The next guest is 3 minutes. We have Trita, Parsi, and Eylon, Levy. One of them will be joining one after the other to have that discussion. And as I said, guys, one of them will be heated because I'm pretty upset at what happened in Lebanon. Now, the oil pipeline in Saudi that got struck, by the way, is a very important oil pipeline. The major Saudi oil pipeline that got hit by Iranian drone is Saudi's lifeline to bypass the Strait of Hormuz, which is pretty much shut anyway. So the fact that was targeted is very telling. That was a very, very important warning shot from Iran. I don't know why Iran would need a warning shot, but I'm just going to call it a warning shot because I don't know what else to make of this strike. What else do we have? And we got 2 more minutes to give you guys updates. Pakistan put out a statement saying they said the following: the ceasefire was violated at a few places, but didn't mention Israel and Iran because they're the 2 countries that violated it, but he didn't mention those. Then we have the images in Lebanon. Lebanese hospitals are urgently calling for any blood donors. Anyone listening that's on X or YouTube, if you're from Lebanon, good time to donate your blood. There's a lot of casualties right now in Lebanon from the strikes. So it's just pretty heartbreaking to see them. If you guys don't go on my X, there's a lot of videos there. Yeah, it's pretty difficult to watch. There was a drone that was downed in Iran, an Israeli drone that was downed in Iran. That's not a big deal. Surveillance will probably continue throughout this war. But again, you're going to see a very different Iran after this war. Very, very different, a lot less restrained. They're pissed and they know their capabilities and they know they have leverage. It's not every day you get a country that gets a strategic win against the world's most powerful superpower. That doesn't happen often. So we've got a new piece of news that just came in here. Oh my God. There's new strikes right now against Beirut as we're speaking. Lisa, if you can put it on screen, it's in the Telegram group. Let me quickly show it to those guys. Let me show it quick. It's nothing major. It's a lot worse footage, but this is fucking war. I hate war. That says a lot, by the way. That's so important. The fact, I'm going to tell my team to post something about it. Iran has to retaliate. I think for them to save face and to actually reassert their dominance in the region, they have to retaliate to this. Despite all the warnings, they just struck Lebanon again. That says a lot. Let me tell the team to add a comment to this, and I'll read out more news for you guys. New Israeli attacks against Beirut. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, guys. I don't know what to make of this. He's not listening to Trump or Iran or Pakistan. Talking about Netanyahu here. All right, we'll get you more information on the strikes that are happening right now in Beirut, but I think we'd expect a major retaliation. I'm worried about the ceasefire as well. Let me go back to the news, guys. So another tweet here. I'm just going through my tweets because all the updates are there. And giving you the ones that matter. It's fucking ridiculous. I can't wait for Eylon Levy to come on. He'll be here any minute. My team just said to me, waiting for the guest. He'll be here any minute. I said here, massive Israeli airstrikes land. Look at this. This is a cemetery, guys. Let me... Oh, Lisa, can you play a clip, Lisa? Let me send it to you. I want to show this to the audience, please. Play this clip. That's a cemetery, guys. There it is, Lisa. If you can play that. No need for an audio. I'll show you guys an image while Lisa's waiting to play it. That's fine. You guys could see my... I don't have anything confidential. There you go. That's a cemetery. The producer will now put the video on stage of a funeral that was struck. And we've got some more updates coming in as well in the meantime. Yeah, Beirut is getting struck hard. Go on my Twitter, guys, if you want, while we're waiting for the guest, which could be here any second. All the team's posting it within seconds. If you want to see the footage of it. The Israeli army spokesperson, Avichai, said the following. He blames Hezbollah for Israel. That's the funeral, guys. That's the funeral. So Israel said they struck military targets. That's a funeral. Yeah. So it's not only a funeral at a cemetery. So I don't know what targets, unless they're going to say there's Hezbollah tunnels under cemeteries now. And who knows? You know, like I try to be as objective as I can. Maybe there is. I doubt it, obviously, but I don't want to make absolute statements when I'm not there verifying it. Let's see. We'll talk to Eylon and Jonathan Conricus later tonight. The Israeli army spokesperson blamed Hezbollah for these attacks. And he said, look, guys, I'm critical of Hezbollah. I made a post. And I said that people get confused. Mario, are you pro-Israel, pro-Iran, anti-US, pro-US? I'm not. I have an opinion on each different things based on the facts we have. I'm not for Hezbollah because Hezbollah put the interests of Iran above Lebanon. I'm not for Israel at all. Like Israel's putting with their interests first and their foreign policy is terrible. The Lebanese people need to take care of their own country, but they can't because they don't have a military. Oh, that's an important tweet. All right, this is, guys, this is going to be interesting but polarizing for you guys. Is Eylon, Lisa, can you send me a message? Is Eylon there yet or you're setting him up? Let me know so I can let the audience know. Here's the tweet. We're already seeing how the Middle East will look like after this war, and it's not good for Israel. Iran is much more willing to confront Israeli aggression. They just threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz, which they did, by the way, and vowed to retaliate to Israeli bombing of Lebanon. Number two, Trump has shown willingness to do business with Iran, talking about a joint toll at the Strait of Hormuz. This is great for Iran and it's terrible for Israel. Iran controls the strait and they don't mind enforcing that control. They just attack Kuwait, Saudi, and UAE for reasons I still cannot figure out. So everything we're seeing today gives us a glimpse of the new Middle East. If any of you are living in the Middle East, so much is going to change. If you're living in the Gulf, not that much will change. It's going to be more behind the scenes. So the Gulf will remain the same, but there'll be a lot more flights and business with Iran, normalization of relations. If you're suffering because of conflicts with Israel, if you're Lebanon, I don't know. I don't know if Hezbollah remains, there's always going to be clashes between them. Eylon's just joined, so it'll be Eylon. Perfect timing because we're going to talk about the Lebanese strikes. I'll give him first. I'll give him the mic for a bit to talk and give me his thoughts on everything, and then we'll start challenging him and asking him the tough questions, similar to what I did with Jonathan Conrad a few days ago. But if you live in Lebanon, in Syria is going to be very good news. I think Israel would hold off. In Lebanon, it's tricky. I think in the short term, there'll be a ceasefire. Things will improve for sure from where they are now. I'm very confident it will be today. There'll be a ceasefire. I'm surprised there's even strikes. In the long term, as I said, there'll still be a proxy conflict between Iran and Israel. They can't afford the direct war, but they'll be clashing in Lebanon through the proxies, through Hezbollah, through other groups. But the Lebanese people, I was talking to people from there, and they said, Mario, there's an attempt to create civil war in Lebanon, but the Lebanese people are seeing through it, and they're calling each other to avoid divisiveness. I think Israelis have even asked some people to kick out any Shiites, Lebanon, from their towns and homes. Israel would say this is because a lot of Shiites are Hezbollah's Shiite. Others would say this is Israel trying to create civil war in Lebanon. And to be clear, Israel benefits from civil war. I think they prefer peace and coexistence like Jordan and Egypt, but they also prefer civil war than peace and coexistence with Hezbollah. Hezbollah is here to stay. They need to figure out a peace deal with Hezbollah. I've always said Hezbollah needs to go. That's my preference. But if Hezbollah doesn't go, Israel has to figure it out with Hezbollah. And Hezbollah has to figure some deal out with the army because Hezbollah can't keep calling the shots with the army. Eylon's here. They're setting up his audio and video. He'll be with us. Hezbollah cannot keep telling the army or the government what to do. They cannot hold the government hostage. They've held the government hostage. They've assassinated politicians in Lebanon. That needs to stop. But at the same time, if Israel's solution to Hezbollah is to keep trying to militarily destroy it, that's not going to work either. So Israel need to change their policy, and Hezbollah, for the sake of Lebanon, need to change their policy. The only problem is, as long as Iran controls Hezbollah, and Iran's control of Hezbollah is going to only increase, in my opinion, after now, because Iran's stronger, then Hezbollah's interests are split between two countries, Lebanon and Iran. And that will never work. The incentives are very misaligned there. Let me see if there's more updates on Lebanon before Eylon joins. Nothing yet, just more bombings and more footage. Iran said 2 hours ago they're preparing a military response against Israel. They haven't responded yet. Over 2 hours ago. They said they'll close the Strait of Hormuz. They did. But they said there's a military response. And that's an important one as well. China's smart as fuck. No one's talking about China. They're the big silent elephant in the room that's pulling a lot of the strings, but not getting attention for it, not making these crazy statements. They're playing it very well. I'll read out this by Counterintelligence Global. China is said to have been very influential in getting Iran to agree to the 2-week ceasefire. They also played a significant role in pushing for the peace process via Pakistan, with Pakistan's foreign minister visiting China early in the process. China wants to see it in the table of world affairs. It's very possible. A lot of people said, Mario, why did Iran accept the deal? My answer is because the terms are so favorable to Iran. But another answer could be, it could be both answers, is that China told them to. China is the reason Iran survived this war. China is the reason that Iran survived the sanctions. China is the reason that Iran won this war. One could even say China won this war. I actually make a post about it. I'm going to get a lot of hate. I'm going to make a post now. I'll do it when Eylon joins. Actually, let me do it now. Watch the hate go off on X whenever I do these statements. Most people see that statement. They don't know where it comes from, the thought process behind it. Not saying I'm right, but at least there's a thought process there. So China, I'm going to say Iran did not win this war. China won this war. And what I imply by this is that China essentially controls Iran the same way the US controls Ukraine. Not exactly the same, similar. That's an unpopular opinion. I'm oversimplifying something, but I think you get the message that China has a lot of influence here. That's the message I'm trying to get across with a bit of shock and awe with the tweet. Let me know in the comments if I should tweet this, because I'll get a lot of hate for it. Iran threatens to close the strait if the bombing continues. They did close the strait, but they did not bomb Israel yet. The ships, there's a few ships that's already started passing through the Strait of Hormuz. We don't know what country they belong to. That happened a couple of hours ago. Yeah. Sorry guys, just getting the updates on Lebanon. It's not pretty. There's a big thing here as well. Israel didn't only strike Lebanon. They tried to kill the leader, the new leader, Naim Qassem, of Hezbollah. Failed. So Israeli Channel 12 says the IDF tried to assassinate Naim Qassem, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, in today's massive bombing wave throughout Lebanon. However, they believe he was not present at the building where he was targeted. And by the way, I was wrong about something. I didn't say it on the show. I didn't post it, but I did think about it. I spoke to people behind the scenes. I said, I think it could be it. I don't think Israel will strike after that massive bombardment we saw. And I had temptation to post the war in Lebanon is over, but I didn't have any information to back it. So this is more of an opinion. I was wrong. Surprisingly, I'm so surprised that Israel's still striking Lebanon. Maybe Trump is giving them some leeway another day of just taking out a few targets. Because if this continues into tomorrow, it changes a lot. It changes a lot. Oil is fluctuating, spiked a bit after Hexet's speech. The ceasefire, the ceasefire violations by Israel and Iran. What else do we have? Is Eylon Levy, Lisa? So is Eylon ready so we can bring him up so we can have a back and forth on Lebanon? We talked about the Saudi pipeline. We talked about Netanyahu's massive bombardment. That's a tweet. That's an important one. Netanyahu's massive bombardment of Lebanon a few minutes ago could mean one of two things, guys. One, Trump told him to end the war, so he wanted to cause as much damage as possible before abiding to those requests. And number two, he's trying to sabotage the entire ceasefire deal. My bet is on one. That was my tweet. Now I'm leaning more to two. Actually, I'm 50-50. I'm really lost. I still would say one is more likely, but the statement's by Trump and Caroline Levitt. Yeah, sorry, he's having internet issues, Eylon, so it could take another minute or two. Hezbollah put out a statement, a long statement. All right, let's see what they just said. With its blind hatred, its habitual criminality, and its boundless brutality, which has become ingrained in its nature, the Israeli enemy committed a series of massacres today against innocent civilians. It targeted civilian areas in the southern suburbs of Beirut, the capital, Sidon, southern Lebanon, and the Bekaa Valley, with dozens of brutal airstrikes, leaving hundreds of martyrs and wounded, including children, women, and the elderly. This barbaric aggression, which at every stage constitutes war crimes and acts of genocide by targeting crowded civilian areas, markets, and shops during peak hours, is nothing but a desperate attempt to take revenge on civilians after all attempts to break and subdue this proud people have failed. Our honorable people and the sons of this land have proven that the brutality of the aggression has only increased their steadfastness, resilience, and adherence to the path of resistance, no matter the immense sacrifices they have made. This unbridled aggression is a clear expression of the enemy's frustration after, and that's actually true, to be honest, I agree with that, after its resounding failure to achieve any of his objectives and plans on various fronts. True. Their objective, we have another big update. Let me read this quickly. It reveals its vulnerability to defeat, its inability to alter the equation imposed by the steadfastness of the Iranian Lebanese people. Take Iran out of this. Focus on Lebanon. And reflects the state of collapse, confusion, and disarray plaguing the beleaguered entity and its defeated army, battered by the blows of the resistance fighters. They make a lot of valid points. The Hezbollah was a lot stronger than people expected. They caused a lot of damage to Israel, and Israel has not been able to achieve its objectives yet. And I don't think they will. We affirm that the blood of the martyrs and the wounded will not be shed in vain. Today's massacres, like all acts of aggression and brutal crimes, underscore our natural and legal right to resist the occupation and respond to its aggression. They will only strengthen our resolve to resist and confront the enemy, to deter aggression, and to defend our people and our homeland, protecting our security in the face of this ongoing aggression. Air defense in Tehran. Air defense is right now in Tehran. Tehran's getting attacked. What the fuck is going on? Hey man,
You talking to
can you
me?
hear me?
Hi
Yeah,
Mario, how are you? All right, thank you.
There's air
Haven't had a
defenses in
siren
Tehran
since
right now.
3:30 in the morning.
Man, there's the
Really?
air defenses and yeah. What do you think it is?
Where are you seeing that?
Just now came in through sources on the ground. Hasn't been confirmed. It just came in seconds ago.
I have not seen that. I will check my own sources and have a look.
Can you check quickly? And before, do you have any sources you get? You have it. Find just check quickly. No worries. Keep it casual.
I'm not seeing anything on this end, but from our end, at least, I found out about the so-called ceasefire because of a missile siren at 2 a.m, and then there were another 2 in the middle of the night. And the Iranian regime hasn't opened the Strait of Hormuz. It's attacked Kuwait. It's attacked the UAE with, I think, 17 ballistic missiles and dozens of drones, and attacks on pipeline in Saudi Arabia. So it doesn't look like the Iranian regime has put that ceasefire into effect. But I guess
it doesn't look like it. It doesn't look like Israel. Yeah, I did a post. Iran and Israel didn't. Now in Iran, I don't know who's calling the shots because Mushtaba said seize all attacks. So I don't know if there's members of Iran that are, trying to seek some sort of revenge, a final strike, because they struck the countries that were most hawkish against Iran. So there could be just a strike as revenge for the for these countries playing a role in the entire war and supporting the US. We don't know. Or it could be something more to it. Maybe some factions don't want this. I think the leadership wants the ceasefire. They've been pretty clear about it, but maybe not. Some people say Iran does not want the ceasefire.
I think there are two ways of looking at it. One is we know from previous rounds with Iran's proxy armies in particular, they always fire at the last minute and sometimes just after the last minute because it's important for their honor to have the final word and say, look, we showed you. But it's also possible that the Iranian regime's command structure has been so completely shattered by Israel's decapitation strikes that those instructions haven't been sent down to the field. And you have operatives acting without a direct chain of command from the top because Israel killed so many commanders that they're no longer getting the orders handed down in time. So those are two options, but both reminders that Iran remains very dangerous.
Eylon, I'm upset at what Israel did today. I don't know if you'd agree with me, but we've had discussions. I was very critical of Hezbollah. I still am. Israel's right to defend itself, etc. But today was extreme. Did you see the videos? They struck a funeral home. They struck markets, a peak hour. I understand if they were Hezbollah targets. Some of them might have been. I heard that Channel 12 said that the leader was also struck. No, maybe you agree with me, maybe not. But do you think they went too far today with those strikes? The death numbers, the buildings that were leveled.
Israel is striking Hezbollah targets. And the reason you are seeing damage within civilian areas is that Hezbollah deliberately builds its military infrastructure inside civilian zones. In particular, the whole Dahia suburb of Beirut, where the Lebanese armed forces have absolutely no control and can't go in there. The situation in Lebanon, let's not beat around the bush. It's tragic, okay? It's really sad to look at a country that should have peaceful relations with Israel act like a failed state and take a beating because it's allowing an Iranian proxy.
Let's go back to that statement. Sorry, I'll interrupt you more than usual now because I'm a bit I've got a pretty strong opinion on what happened today. But I've got a strong opinion on Iran striking the Gulf as well. So we'll get there. But we agree on it. So there's not much back and forth. Why a funeral home? I'm not sure if you saw that video. Like when I see buildings, I'm like, maybe Hezbollah was there. There were no warnings in those buildings. There were no evacuation orders either. So it's hard for me to prove was Hezbollah there or not. So I can always assume people that hate Israel says they killed a building full of people. People that love Israel say it was Hezbollah there hiding in the building. But when it's a funeral home, like this one there, if you play the video, it is in a cemetery. Like, do you think, like, you could support Israel's right to defend itself? You can even support Israel not wanting to end the war. I'd agree with both of those. And Israel wanting to continue its objectives and getting rid of Hezbollah makes complete sense. It's in your best interests. But if you want the Lebanese people to turn and support Israel and turn on against Hezbollah, which they were doing that, the Lebanese government did that. That sentiment is all shifted. A few days ago when you guys, the defense minister made those comments, I don't know if we talked about them, about people not being able to go back to their homes in the south after the war ends, 620,000 people. And then he's going to level buildings near the border for a buffer zone, just like he did in Gaza. When he made those comments, and then now we see the bombing that happened today, people that were very critical of Israel, the messages show, very critical of Hezbollah, the messages are posted some of these screenshots. They're in a very different mindset, man.
Look, the first question about this particular target, I don't know what the IDF was targeting, and neither do you. And in that state of uncertainty, you can't make judgments about whether that was legitimate or not. You have to wait for information to come out and know what military presence Hezbollah had there in order to assess the legality of a particular strike. We know that in Gaza, for example, Hamas did fight out of cemeteries, did dig tunnels under cemeteries. It's not below them. And I wouldn't be surprised to see the same happening in Lebanon, but we just don't know. And therefore, there's no point in us speculating. But what is happening in Lebanon now is the result of 20 years in which the Lebanese government has allowed Iran's proxy army to attack Israeli civilians operating from their territory. We're witnessing the response of the catastrophic failure of diplomacy to deal with the question of Iranian aggression and occupation inside Lebanon. Because what do you want Israel to do? I'm not asking that as a rhetorical question. There are Israeli villages along the border.
Can I answer? Yeah, I have an answer. Sorry,
let me explain the question. There are Israeli villages along the border where people do not want to go back if they don't have to, because they are sitting ducks for Hezbollah rocket fire. Right now, they have maybe 30 seconds to run for shelter, and that's only because Israel established a buffer zone inside Lebanon to push Hezbollah away. None of this would be happening if after the 2006 war and the UN passed Resolution 1701, Hezbollah had Lebanon had fulfilled its obligation to dismantle Hezbollah. Instead, they let it rearm and build a NATO-sized invasion force on northern Israel's border. None of this would have happened if after November 2024, when Lebanon promised, this time, for real, we mean it, we'll push Hezbollah away from Israel's border, they actually did it. But the Lebanese government was either unable or unwilling to do that. Iran doubled its investment in Hezbollah from $1 billion to $2 billion. And Hezbollah went back to firing at Israelis, and now Israelis are dead, injured, and displaced because of an illegal proxy army that Lebanon is not doing anything about. So, Mario, I'm also pretty angry. I'm also really angry at all the diplomats who promised us that diplomacy and international law would solve this crisis, because while they did that, they allowed the Lebanese government to turn a blind eye to Hezbollah operating on its soil. And Israel's patience has now snapped. Israel is saying, as long as Hezbollah remains armed, remains attacking civilians in northern Israel, either northern Israel is going to have to be evacuated, or southern Lebanon will be. And Lebanon has two choices. Either it can dismantle the Iranian proxy army on its soil, or it can deal with the consequences of allowing acts of aggression to emanate from its soil. But Israel is done evacuating its own people, forcing them out of their own homes, because the Lebanese government is too inept or feckless or weak to stop Hezbollah firing at Israeli families. So I'm also pretty angry, Mario.
There's a lot of just things happen in the last 10 seconds. Bad things. All right, I'm going to read out a statement by Trump and a statement by Iran that literally just came in. Trump, numerous agreements, lists, and letters are being sent out by people that have absolutely nothing to do with the USA-Iran negotiations. In many cases, they are total fraudsters, charlatans, and worse. They will be rapidly exposed after our federal investigation is completed. There is only one group of meaningful points that are accepted to the United States, and they will be discussing them behind closed doors during these negotiations. These are the points that are the basis of which we agreed to a ceasefire. It is something that is reasonable. He put points in ceasefire in capital letters, especially ceasefire in capital letters. He's making it clear the war hasn't ended. It is something that is reasonable and can easily be dispensed with. It's very much like fake news CNN last night headlining a source that has no power or authority to write a letter claiming great authority. Trump. Number one. That's number two. Iran responded as well, literally in the same within seconds. So I think they put out a statement simultaneously. Less than 24 hours after agreeing to the ceasefire, largely out of respect, that's according to Iranian official, largely out of respect for our Pakistani brothers who are mediating, Israel has already violated it, and Trump has begun to twist his words and backtrack on his promises. This is not how diplomacy works, and Iran will not entertain it. Iranian official.
Okay, there's a lot there. Let's unpack. First of all, since President Trump announced his ceasefire with Iran, Iran has been violating it. How do I know? Because I woke up at 2 a.m. from missile sirens, which is how I know that they reached a ceasefire in the first place. I woke up 3 times in the middle of the night from missile sirens because Iran continued attacking Israel.
No, so on Iranian regime, they were both attacked each other. Both attacked. Israel was also bombing Iran right after the ceasefire, similar to the 12-day war. A bit tit for tat within the next hour afterwards, and then they both stopped. Other than the Gulf and Lebanon.
has continued attacking the Gulf, and Lebanon is not part of the ceasefire. How do we know? Because President Trump, the White House, have been very clear that it's not part of the ceasefire. Now, as for
Pakistan, the context,
as for the statement,
but Eylon, Iran is another party to this negotiation. They said it's part of the ceasefire, so you can't say Trump said it's not, but the other party said yes. We don't know because one party said yes, one party was no. Iran said it is part of the ceasefire.
But Iran can claim that, but in any case, but Israel is not a party to the ceasefire. But Israel did not negotiate this ceasefire. This is a deal between the United States and Iran, and the United States says Lebanon has absolutely nothing to do with it. So Iran can claim all it likes that it forced an agreement that gets Israel to back off Hezbollah. The mediator can claim it as well. The fact is, Israel is a sovereign state responding to armed attack against its border. It wasn't part of this ceasefire. It's working together with the United States, but certainly Israel hasn't committed to giving immunity to Hezbollah, and the United States is saying that wasn't part of the agreement. Now, the statement from President Trump, the original statement where President Trump said that Iran's 10 points form, I've got the tweet here, a workable basis on which to negotiate, was bizarre. Why was it bizarre? Because the 10 points...
The 10 points that came out yesterday, correct?
No, what's bizarre is Donald Trump saying that the 10 points are a workable basis for negotiation. Why? Because the 10 points that have been reported in the international media are Iran nationalizing the Strait of Hormuz and taxing ships going through there, immunity for the Iranian regime as it continues to build its ballistic missiles, continuing to enrich uranium, lifting of sanctions so it can continue to build those intercontinental ballistic missiles that could reach the United States, and immunity for its proxy armies. President Donald Trump is coming here and saying, I don't know what reports you're reading about what the 10 points are, but the 10 points are being discussed behind closed doors. I can only hope, the only way I can make sense of this is that Donald Trump, that the 10 points that have been passed by the mediators are not the same as what is being reported in the international media. Because it's definitely a very bad thing if the United States thinks those 10 points are a workable basis for negotiation. We've got to hope there's something else happening behind the scenes, because otherwise it's just surreal, bizarre, and dangerous.
You asked me a question earlier, man. You said to me, what would Israel do? What should Israel do to this threat? All right. You know my position. Hezbollah should disarm and join Lebanon. I think that ship has sailed. Iran is coming out. You might disagree with this. It's come out a lot stronger from this, assuming this 10-point peace plan is the basis for negotiations. If it is, and if Iran's going to keep control of the Strait of Hormuz in any way, Iran is a big winner from this war. So if Iran comes out a winner, it's also more emboldened. The Iran that's putting out those statements is very different and acting on the attacks on Hezbollah right now, about to respond, and they close the Strait of Hormuz again, is very different to the Iran that was wounded after the 12-day war. So they're in a very different mindset. They just struck the Gulf right after a ceasefire was signed. It doesn't seem like they're the ones that are desperate for the ceasefire. It seems it's more on Trump's side, on the American side, not the Israeli side, not the Iranian side. So Iran is a lot more emboldened. And Trump is talking about doing a business deal on the Strait of Hormuz, man. He's talking about a joint toll system. So you're talking about that 10-point peace plan not being a basis for negotiations. But Trump said it. We're talking about what Trump said. It's on the basis of negotiations. Trump said, he didn't say, no, that's bullshit. He said, oh, we're going to join them with it.
Well, I think that's mental. I think it would be
we agree on that one.
I think it would be extremely dangerous if the United States succumbs to Iranian blackmail, allows institutionalized piracy on the high seas. It means every American who fills up his car at the gas tank will be giving cash directly to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps to build ballistic missiles that could reach the United States. It's absolute insanity, and I hope it doesn't happen. But the Iranian regime, look, let's take a step back. The fact that people are saying Iran has won because all it had to do was survive tells you just how badly it has lost. Let's wind the clock back 2.5 years to when the Iranian Axis launched its regional war against Israel. Hamas invading, then Hezbollah, then the Houthis, then the militias in Iraq and Syria, and finally Iran itself, all joining in. The Iranian regime did not build thousands of ballistic missiles, a nuclear program deep under a mountain, and a ring of fire around Israel so that it could just survive. The fact that it's claiming that it's stronger because it managed to absorb some
but no one's claiming that.
blows.
But no one's claiming that. If they just survived, I wouldn't claim that. We're talking about a joint toll booth. Trump said it. You said Trump's words. You said Trump said that Lebanon's not included. You should listen to him. Okay, Trump said there's going to be a joint toll booth between the US and Iran. Iran is talking about controlling the Strait of Hormuz. Iran currently controls the Strait of Hormuz. So in this new Iran, it goes to my original question. I think now, before I'd say Israel should destroy Hezbollah, and that's their right, I worry that ship has sailed now. It's a new, you're not going to like this. It's a new, the balance of power has shifted in the region, depending what happens on Friday. And the best solution now is no longer to destroy Hezbollah, is unfortunately for Lebanon, because I think Hezbollah should go, but it's to normalize relations in some way, to find some sort of peace deal where Hezbollah stops striking Israel, Israel stops striking Hezbollah, and they slowly built a long-term peace plan. Hopefully Lebanon normalize relations with Israel. Again, I'm the naive optimist all the time, but they normalize relations over the next 5-10 years, and Iran improves. I think the goal of militarily fighting backfired on Iran, backfired on Israel, and I think this should begin. If Iran got annihilated in this war, I'd be having a very different conversation. I think Hezbollah's days are numbered. But if Iran comes out like we saw in that plan and the controlling the Strait of Hormuz, I just don't think Hezbollah has anywhere to go. Iran will not let Hezbollah fall anymore.
Okay, you said a lot of things. I'll try to unpack them. First of all, you see here the tragedy for Lebanon of the ceasefire with Iran, because the fact the Iranian regime was taking such a pummeling is what gave Lebanon both the urgency and the opportunity to dismantle Hezbollah. The goal here was to choke Hezbollah off from its funding from its Iranian patrons. The Lebanese government wants, it can't, it doesn't have the ability to. It chickened out of a fight. People say taco. Let's talk about Laco. Okay, Lebanon chickened out. Can't take the guns off Hezbollah. That's a disaster. Now look, I want to see peace with Lebanon. I think Lebanon should have made peace in 1948. I think there's no reason for Israel and Lebanon to be enemies, okay? I think the Lebanese president should hop on a flight, come to Jerusalem, and give a speech to the Israeli people about how he's joining the Abraham Accords. He can't do that as long as there is a state within a state inside Lebanon, as long as Hezbollah remains the dominant armed force that the Lebanese armed forces are scared to take a fight with.
Eylon, do you think Iran will let Hezbollah fall now? If they keep control of the Straits, and if they do a business deal with Trump, let's just use that hypothetical, if that happens, which you said is a horrible deal, and I would agree every Israeli would find it as a terrible deal, and that would be terrible for Netanyahu. I'd say that would be the first major loss by Israel since October 7th, because they've had military successes in the 12-day war and the war on Hezbollah. Hamas is a different story, but Hezbollah and Iran, I think they had military successes. I think that will be the first military failure if the 10-point plan part of it becomes reality, especially on the Straits. And if that happens, do you really think Iran would let Hezbollah fall?
Okay, Mario, two things. Firstly, I'm not sure we're following the same war. For the last over a month, Israeli and American jets have dropped thousands of munitions in thousands of sorties on Iran, targeting not just the ballistic missiles and the launchers and the silos and the factories, but also the steel plants and the petrochemical plants. Israel has been taking a hammer to Iran's military-industrial complex so that when this ends, the Iranian regime will struggle to rebuild that war machine. Militarily, this has been an astonishing success. The only question is to what extent the United States leverages that into a strategic opportunity rather than trying to succumb to that blackmail and reach an arrangement with Iran when the Gulf countries are now calling for much more aggressive containment of the Iranian regime. Now, Iran doesn't want to let Hezbollah go under. Let's remember, the Iranian regime's strategy has always been...
Can we go to your first point? Can we go back and forth on your first point about Iran losing? We are watching the same war, and you're right with everything you said. They're facts. But if they control the Strait of Hormuz and charge $2 million a ship, they make $96 billion. Remember, we're using that hypothetical, assuming what Trump said will actually materialize based on the numbers we have. They make $96 billion per year. That's more than enough to compensate for all the damages within less than a year. So you see what I mean? Like, you're right. If Iran does not have control of the Strait of Hormuz, they will not be the same. They will not be a superpower. If they do, they control the world's biggest choke point, energy choke point.
These are Iran's demands. If the United States accepts them, it would be an absolute disaster that will have failed to convert the incredible military success of the Israeli-American joint action into strategic gain. Now, you're in the UAE. The UAE put its neck out saying, we're ready to join a maritime force that is going to forcibly open the Strait of Hormuz. The UAE did not want to see the Iranian regime institutionalizing piracy and erecting a toll booth over the Strait of Hormuz. I think it would be an absolute disaster if the United States accedes to that. Let's cross that bridge when we get to it. But if you spoke to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei on October 7th, 2023, and told him, hey, in 2.5 years, Hamas will lose half of Gaza. Israel will have a buffer zone inside Lebanon. And by the way, Nasrallah's dead and Sinwar's dead and all the major leaders you can name there are dead. You're going to be dead. The entire leadership of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is going to be dead. Your nuclear program is going to be dust and buried under mountains. Your ballistic missile factories will have been bombed. Your largest petrochemical and steel plants will have been bombed. But by the way, you're still able to take pot shots at ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Do you think you won? Do you think that Khamenei would say, wow, that sounds like a victory? Of course not. But the Strait of Hormuz is Iran standing on its hind legs. It's it is Iran using the only point of leverage that it has over the global economy. And even now they've given that up because they've agreed to a 2-week ceasefire in which the Straits of Hormuz must be open. They haven't been. We started the show saying the Strait of Hormuz is still closed. But Iran has now agreed, at least for the next 2 weeks, to give up that only point of leverage that it has because its ability to project power beyond its borders. Except for those ballistic missiles with cluster warheads that rain indiscriminate damage, its conventional capabilities have been massively, massively degraded. And I hope the United States will have the strategic foresight to leverage that into a strategic gain instead of getting spooked by the energy markets and allowing Iran to nationalize Hormuz.
You said we'll cross the bridge when we get there. I think we should talk about crossing that bridge. I'm not saying we crossed it. Nothing's been signed. But for Trump to say it, Iran to say it, most importantly for Trump to essentially agree to it in a statement. Now, Trump could flip-flop, I understand. Let's please treat it as fact. I know and I agree, like for Israel, strategically, it's terrible. For the region, for the Gulf, it's terrible. It's great for Iran. But not bad for the US, I think, but it's terrible for the region.
But Mario, it's also a hypothetical. It's a hypothetical because it hasn't happened. The Iranian regime can claim it wants $1 per barrel and to be paid in crypto.
I know, but it's a hypothetical that Trump's talking about. So I think it's one we should at least discuss. If that hypothetical becomes true, can you give me the other side of the argument? What is the worst case scenario for Israel? It's not always the best case scenario. What if Iran does come out with that toll booth? What is the region going to look like? As objective as you can. Do you think Hezbollah is going to have to stay? Maybe it needs to change its foreign policy, its approach to Hezbollah to avoid a future conflict with Iran? Maybe you still think even with a strong Iran, with the control of the Strait of Hormuz and a business partnership with Trump, Israel should continue striking Hezbollah. Maybe that's your stance, but you have to think about the repercussions as well and having another war with Iran, or maybe a 5-10 year plan to improve relations not only with Lebanon, but I'm going to say the unthinkable with Hezbollah and eventually with Iran is maybe the only other option to avoid a future war with a country, with an Iran that has control of the Strait of Hormuz and that has Trump as a business partner for the Strait of Hormuz.
This is a wild hypothetical that is difficult to entertain because it goes against the entirety of Donald Trump's grand strategy against Iran in the past decade plus. Remember, Trump was the president.
He posted it.
Okay, let's wait and see. I'm saying Trump understands, I think. I've never met the man. I don't speak for him. But from what I see on TV and Twitter, understands that the problem with Obama's JCPOA deal was that it poured money into Iran that would allow it to develop conventional weapons. Those conventional weapons gave Iran a shield of immunity that allowed it to race towards nuclear weapons. If President Trump goes down this route, it would be an incredible flip-flop and U-turn that would be just completely unlike anything we've seen from the United States foreign policy towards Iran. It would be Barack Obama on steroids. That's why I struggle to believe that they're really going to go in that direction. And I think I just struggle to see that actually happening. because it would be a disaster for the region. If that does happen, though, you asked what will happen if that does happen.
Oh, yes.
If that does happen, I think you can expect to see the consolidation of a regional bloc to balance out Iran. Because if until now, the Gulf countries avoided normalization with Israel because they thought the United States is going to protect us from Iran, we don't need to deal with Israel directly other than through CENTCOM. Now the Gulf countries are going to have to make a choice. Either you strike a deal with a hegemonic Iran. Again, this is an Iran that has been stripped of its steel and petrochemical plants and ballistic missiles and is militarily much weaker. But strike a deal and join the Iranian bloc, or you form a bloc to balance it, which international relations is normally what happens when you have one big power.
Or could they join a bloc with Iran? That was already discussed.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Those are the two options, right? Weak powers, when faced with a much bigger power, have two options: either appeasement. You feed the crocodile and hope you won't get eaten. You put yourself in its orbit. That's a very dangerous and stupid thing to do when you look at other countries that have put themselves in Iran's orbit. Okay? No one wants to be Lebanon. No one wants to be Yemen. No one wants to be Assad, Syria, because they see the chaos that Iran has spread through the region once it has you under its grip. The alternative, if you want to protect your sovereignty, if you want to protect your citizens, is to join an alliance with Israel, with an ally that the United States has just praised as a brave and capable ally fighting together with it. So I think the result of the Iranian regime surviving this war, let's put a pause on the question of whether the people end up bringing down the regime, that's a separate question. But the result of the Iranian regime surviving this war is not just the Abraham Accords countries, but other countries in the region saying we need to consolidate our military and intelligence cooperation with Israel, because that's what's going to protect us from Iran, not the United States, definitely not Britain and France.
Eylon, something just happened. A piece of information just came in. I want to get your. So you were, I think you were the IDF spokesperson for a while, correct?
No, I was a spokesman for the Israeli government in the first few months of the October 7 war.
Oh, okay, not for a prolonged period. So the reason I ask is you would have access to a lot of information that probably gives you an idea, before things are announced. So when we hear things like what I'm about to tell you, maybe you can read into it and what it means. So. Breaking: Israel orders the Lebanese army to evacuate the Qasmiya Sea Bridge in Tyre, the last remaining road connecting Lebanon north and south of the Litani. So my interpretation of this is that Israel is trying to occupy. So their strategy right now, what Netanyahu decided after the ceasefire, he knows he'll have to abide to the ceasefire. He knows Trump will force him to abide to the ceasefire because he knows him not abiding to the ceasefire could jeopardize the ceasefire between Trump and Iran, and Trump can't afford that. So that's just the reality of it. So Trump told Netanyahu, do what you need to do. You've got 1 day or 2 days. And Netanyahu is rushing right now to occupy South Lebanon, which people will think is jeopardizing the ceasefire in Iran. And I think Iran would accept that. They've sacrificed Lebanon before as a whole. They'll sacrifice south of Lebanon. They care more about Hezbollah. So Iran may accept behind the scenes. And we may see a ceasefire soon between Hezbollah and Israel that involves Israel occupying the entirety of South Lebanon. Is that a possible scenario, and how likely do you think it is? That what Israel's trying to do right now is occupy south of Lebanon, as they said, achieve their objective a lot faster?
Sure. Look, I haven't seen this report, but I'll say I think we can deduce two things about the Israeli strategy in Lebanon. And it's different from what the Israeli strategy was a year ago, right? A year ago, there was an agreement with Lebanon that Lebanon was going to dismantle Hezbollah, right? And Lebanon didn't do that. So now we're on to plan B. Now we're on to plan B of what you do when diplomacy fails. And I think first of all, what is Israel doing? It's creating a buffer zone in southern Lebanon. It is moving in, I don't know how far, whether all the way to the Litani, 3 miles in. It's creating a buffer zone that will separate Hezbollah from Israeli civilians, because the alternative is to create a buffer zone.
Sorry, Trisha, that buffer zone, even Conricus and others I spoke to, from the Litani to Israel is not, that's a buffer zone. There's two types of buffer zone. There's a buffer zone to give a distance so Hezbollah cannot strike with their rockets. And the other buffer zone is to get Hezbollah as far away as possible. The south of the Litani is a really large buffer zone. It's not one that needs to be completely demilitarized.
Do you agree with that? Well, it has to be completely demilitarized. The whole of Lebanon must be demilitarized of Hezbollah, right?
From Hezbollah,
I don't think an Israeli occupation of the whole of the area south of the Litani is realistic. But I think what Israel is trying to do is two things. First of all, create a buffer zone in order to push the threat away. It's as simple as that, okay? Israel believes as long as Hezbollah is armed, either you evacuate your own people or you evacuate the people on the other side of the border. If Lebanon doesn't dismantle Hezbollah, it has to deal with the consequences of allowing a terrorist army to shoot at our civilians from its territory. It's bad, it sucks, but we're not moving our own people from their homes because Lebanon is unable to dismantle Hezbollah. So the first thing is create a buffer zone. Allow Israelis, the brave people who live on the northern border, to have 30 seconds to run for shelter rather than 0 seconds because you've pushed the threat away. That's the first thing. The second thing is leverage over Lebanon. What is Israel basically doing? It's saying, you, Lebanon, have turned a blind eye for years as Hezbollah built a terrorist army and an invasion force and missiles to attack our people. You didn't dismantle Hezbollah. It just wasn't a top priority for you. You weren't able to do it. So now we have something that you want. We have a strip of territory in the south of the country. You want it back? Dismantle Hezbollah. Get rid of this terrorist army you've been promising to dismantle for 20 years. Make peace with us, and you'll get it back. But we're not giving you back the territory so that it can be used by Hezbollah, because this is territory where Lebanon did not have effective sovereignty in the first place, right? This is territory that was under de facto Hezbollah occupation.
I'm going to agree with you on this. So if I have a question for you, just to understand where you stand. So do you think the Israeli defense minister cuts a statement that south of the Litani, the Lebanese civilians should not be able to go back to their homes, 20% of them, after the war ends? Do you think that should become policy? I don't know if it already is, but do you think it should be policy?
I don't think it's realistic from a military perspective for Israel to control that much territory in southern Lebanon.
Respect. I agree with you there. Do you think the other one, and Conricus, by the way, agreed on that point as well. Do you think that the towns, there's a few towns just on the border that they said they'll do to them like they did to Gaza? Do you think they should do that?
Look, I think we have to separate politicians' bombastic rhetoric that is intended to do two things: to scare the enemy and to appease voters, from the reality of the military strategy. The military strategy is to dismantle Hezbollah's infrastructure. It just so happens that Hezbollah built its infrastructure inside civilian villages. I don't know whether you saw the video that I shared on Twitter, at least a few days ago, showing Hezbollah moving a ballistic missile launcher out of a civilian home. It's not that they hide weapons in homes. They literally built houses around.
So, but it's very different. But do you think if there's a missile launcher in a house, they should remove the missile launcher? Okay, there's no tunnels under it. Should they also demolish the house after they remove the missile launcher?
Well, the house is a facade. That's the point. It's not a real house.
No, I'm saying what if it's an actual person's house, but the people evacuated and Hezbollah took it over?
Well, this is a military target. You can't go in and send troops in order to roll it out on a wheelie, right?
I'll concede on that one. What if
they're the bomb, a ballistic missile?
Because what we're seeing is villages, and I've seen the videos, you've seen them as well. What we're seeing is villages completely getting wiped, demolished. Do you think that one is justified as well? I'm saying they demolished churches, mosques. It's mainly churches in the south, churches and homes, people's homes. I'm sure there's Hezbollah infrastructure. Hezbollah had presence there. I want Hezbollah gone. But do you think they should have demolished the homes as well? Is that justified or no?
It depends whether they were military infrastructure or not.
If there was no military infrastructure in the particular house.
There is absolutely no military infrastructure. I think it's difficult to see what the justification would be under international law. If there was military infrastructure, and we know that is Hezbollah's strategy, then it's absolutely fair game, and those are fair targets.
We know that was
Hezbollah's strategy.
Putting international law aside, I mean, personally, you as Eylon Levy, do you think they should? Because I know a lot of Israelis are full of anger after October 7th and after Hezbollah kept striking the north. I don't know if you have family or friends in the north. So I know you guys have all been impacted by this. So as Eylon Levy, do you think these homes, even those homes, should be destroyed as a lesson for people in the south? Or you think, no, if it's a civilian home with no military infrastructure, it should be left intact?
A civilian home with zero military infrastructure is not a legitimate target and should be left alone. That's why we're focusing on the military targets.
Agree. Agree. And I agree on your statement that south of the Litani, if it's being used as leverage as a way to scare Lebanon, I think it's a bad rhetoric because it turns Lebanon against.
But by the way, Mario, notice, when did the Lebanese government pass the resolution banning Hezbollah's military action?
When Israel bombed Lebanon hard, when Israel
and when did they order the Iranian ambassador to leave? Okay,
Eylon,
this is all happening as a result. This is all happening as a result of Israeli military pressure.
Eylon, do you know how much hate I get? I've said this many times. I can't go to Lebanon for that reason. I get so much hate for my stance on Hezbollah. And I think you make a good point. It doesn't justify some things. Rhetoric from the defense minister does the opposite of what it should do because it turns people, and I'm talking about not a random person on the street. I'm talking about people that have influence in Lebanon, people that are members of parliament. They're very critical of Hezbollah. They're putting their neck on the line. There's a very wealthy Lebanese person, very politically active. He's putting his neck on the line. If you see his post, extremely hawkish on Israel. But when he saw the statements by the defense minister, he kind of immediately walked back and started changing his tone. And after the strikes today, again, walked back further. So my worry is that there's a line where if you cause Lebanon enough harm, they'd be like, fuck you, Hezbollah. Look, you brought Israel to us. Because it's so clear Hezbollah did this for the sake of Iran. It's so clear. Anyone denying it is just blinded with bias. But at the same time, there's a line. If you cross it, people will look at Gaza. We're like, everyone, you see the rhetoric now. Lebanon's being turned into Gaza when you see footage of these homes being demolished. And I worry this line is either a mistake because it's being crossed and turning the sentiment against Israel, or the opposite, what I still refuse to believe, but I'm considering more and more plausible, is there's a loud minority in Israel that doesn't have your opinions, that has more extreme opinions than you do. Because a lot of people listening to you right now that are not fans of Israel, they'll be like, Eylon Levy, this Zionist, he's a genocidal maniac. They don't know that I've spoken to a lot of people in Israel. You're one of the moderates. There's people that like wipe the entire Lebanon. I don't think some people have extremely worse rhetoric because for whatever reason, without getting into it. So this is where I worry. Angry. Yeah, exactly. And in many cases, rightly so, even doesn't justify the rhetoric. So my worry is that line is being crossed. The line was crossed today with the strikes on all these targets. Great to weaken Hezbollah, but I think a line was crossed. Too many targets were hit. It was too extensive. But for me, the statements by the defense minister are even worse than this. Another question. I know what your opinion is.
You just asked a question. I didn't answer.
Go ahead. Yeah, I'll add one more question to it. Do you answer the others first? I'll add one more. Actually, screw it. The other question I want to add to it, Eylon, so you have three to answer, is do you think there is a loud voice in the Israeli military or in the Israeli government that actually has a different agenda to what me and you believe the agenda is? And they do have a plan, a long-term plan to annex southern Lebanon. Do you think that's at least a possibility one should be worried about?
Sure, I'll address. First of all, there's the question of the targets that Israel is going after, and there is the question of rhetoric. And these are two very different issues, okay? One is the targets. Hezbollah shouldn't be in Beirut, okay? Hezbollah shouldn't be in Lebanon at all. Once Hezbollah is using that infrastructure to wage jihad against Israel, Israel has every right and every duty to go after that military infrastructure that's being used to wage war against us. Needs to do as much as it can, where possible, to give precaution and warn people in advance of those strikes. Strikes to attempts to mitigate harm to civilians means using munitions that are as precise as possible, using precise intelligence, okay? Anything you can do to mitigate harm to civilians. But military targets are military targets. If Hezbollah doesn't want to be hit, it can surrender. If Lebanon doesn't want its territory to be thwacked, it can dismantle Hezbollah like it promised to do all along. And it's only Israel's military pressure that is giving Lebanon the urgency to dismantle Hezbollah. As for the rhetoric, let's just say if I were in charge of Israel's national comms, the message you would be hearing outward would be a much clearer message that Israel wishes to have peace with Lebanon, that it has no territorial demands over Lebanon, and that it is interested in securing the security of northern Israel, and that is it. And as soon as Lebanon is going to make peace with Israel,
I can't criticize. I was going to say I can't even criticize you. I can't criticize Israel's rhetoric anymore. You know why? Because the world's biggest democracy took it to a whole new level. How can I criticize what the defense minister is saying when Trump said he's going to wipe out a civilization? That's a very important point, though. I'm going to use that point. Whenever someone's criticizing Israel's rhetoric, which I am one of the leading voices doing that, but I'm like, yeah, but what did Trump just do? And obviously I'm a fan of the US, a fan of global democracy. It's my country. Australia is allied with the US, but that changed a lot. Those statements.
Look, Mario, you have to remember. First of all, look, Trump's statement about destroying a whole civilization was bizarre. It was bizarre because the fact the statement ended with "God bless the great people of Iran" shows you that he didn't mean Iranian civilization. He was referring to the regime, and why he referred to the regime as a civilization is anyone's guess. I have no idea. It was a very poorly worded tweet. Now, whenever politicians or statesmen make a statement, there are three audiences they have in mind. Okay, and when we complain about the rhetoric, sometimes we're getting confused about who the primary audience is, and sometimes the politicians are being dunderheads and then they're not thinking strategically. There is the home audience, your own voters, the people who expect you to take action. There is the enemy, and there is an international audience, diplomats, media, what they want to hear. In this case, politicians may be chest thumping in order to appeal to a domestic electorate who are angry and want to see that the government is taking firm action and think the government isn't being tough enough. They're also speaking to scare the enemy. And let's be frank, the only reason that Lebanon is finally taking action against Hezbollah, although it's not working because the Iranian ambassador is refusing to get lost from Lebanon, is because Israel has scared the bejesus out of them into realizing that they're going to pay a very big price.
There was a report that Israel killed him, no? Did they kill him? Do you know?
The Iranian ambassador? Not that I saw.
In Lebanon? Oh, they tried to strike him or he survived. There was, when Lebanon was trying to kick him out, he refused and Israel, I think, struck him. Yeah. You shouldn't be, what do you mean, Iranian ambassador? Don't be surprised. You guys struck the supreme leader. I think the Iranian ambassador is a low-level target.
Right at the beginning of the war, right at the beginning of the war, Israel put out a statement saying all Revolutionary Guard and Iranian regime officials should get lost from Lebanon right now because otherwise we're coming to get you. So they can't say they weren't warned.
I agree with your comments on Trump. I get a lot of slack for this, but I think Trump you've articulated it in a better way than I have. Trump had many audiences with his comments, with every post he does. And this time, I think this post was for one audience, and that's negotiators on the Iranian side. That's why it was so extreme. So he had them in mind as he posted it. Exactly. I was tweeting from the day he started going all over the place. You know, it was like 4 days ago, 3-4 days ago. I already started posting saying, guys, this is actually good news. This is, for me, it just indicates Trump has already made a decision. He wants to end the war, and he's just trying to get as many concessions as possible. Now, I was
as critical as I was.
The alternative is,
as critical as I was that about the ceasefire and the way it's folding. The fact is, the Iranian regime before was saying no temporary ceasefire, only a permanent end of hostilities, not willing to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. And even though they haven't done that, you now have them agreeing to a temporary ceasefire and reopening the Strait of Hormuz, which is what they didn't want to do. And it looks like Trump scared them into doing it.
Yeah, one argument. And on the other side as well, Trump said a lot of things that he wanted as part of the deal, and he doesn't have them either. So I think two of them were going pretty extreme with the rhetoric and agreed to somewhere in the middle. Who won, we'll see. And look, there's a lot of... I think there's a lot of room. There's not much nuance in times of war. Like you're being critical of Trump, but you're also being critical of Israeli rhetoric. You're also being critical of Hezbollah. Trita Parsi, I think it'll be coming on in 4 minutes. People loved him because he was very critical of the Iranian regime. And now he's very critical of the war on Iran, and suddenly people hate him. So I think people don't understand there's a lot of nuance to this. You can be very critical of Trump's rhetoric, but agree that his decision to walk away from the war is the right decision. And when it comes to Israel, we can disagree with Israel's rhetoric, but at the same time, agree that Hezbollah needs to go. Now, my question to you is, what do you think is as a final question, what is Israel's strategy, Eylon? What do you think they're going to do next? My guess is they're going to occupy
with Lebanon
or
Iran.
I saw the statement, Lebanon. They're going to occupy the south. I think with Iran, they don't decide anymore. I think now the new world, Iran and the US decide what happens to Iran on the battlefield or diplomatically. I think the days of Israel deciding that, I think, are over. I could be wrong. But I'd love, you can answer both, actually. What will Israel be doing with Iran, and what will they be doing with Lebanon, which I think is, for me, is more important, because I think they have more influence there.
With Iran, let's see if this ceasefire holds or if it even comes into effect, right? We talk about the ceasefire, but Iran has been attacking Israel and the Gulf and hasn't reopened the Strait of Hormuz. So I don't know what ceasefire we're talking about. A lot is going to depend on what deal the Americans make with the Iranians. There are too many variables there. As with Lebanon, Israel is going to continue consolidating a buffer zone that, one, will give breathing space for citizens in northern Israel so they feel safe being at home, and two, gives leverage against Lebanon in order to freak them out into finally dismantling Hezbollah. Mario, I have an unpopular opinion, which is that wars should end with peace. I don't think wars should end with half-baked ceasefires that continue states of enmity and hostility. I think this needs to end with the whole Middle East understanding that Israel isn't going anywhere. And Lebanon needs to make peace with it. You don't need to have friendly relations if you don't want to. That's on you. But you do need to have mutual recognition, normal relations. And if Lebanon makes peace with Israel and decides to engage with it as an ally against a common enemy, Hezbollah, that would be an amazing advance. But as long as Lebanon treats Israel basically as an enemy state because it won't recognize it, won't send diplomats to it, then Israel is just dealing with the reality that we have a failed state on our northern border that the Iranian regime has been exploiting to wage attacks against us. We're going to have to push those attacks away and create leverage for Lebanon to finally wake up and destroy this terrorist army.
I think that's a strategy as well. Eylon, absolute pleasure to have you as always. Thank you so much for your time. I'm glad there were no alerts. Thank you, brother. As Trita joins, he's joining right now. There's bombings in Iran. Trita, I'm not sure if you know, Iran's getting bombed as we speak. I'm guessing it's Israel. I'm sure you guys have the same guess. But let me tell you exactly where it's being bombed. Literally a few seconds ago. There's two crazy things. Airstrikes on Tehran and Karaj, northern Iran. And air defenses have been active for well over 20 minutes. And the second one is Iranian media claims the Mirage 2009 fighters, 2000-9 fighters, operated by the UAE were behind the attacks on the Iranian refineries in the Persian Gulf earlier today. We saw Iran retaliate. The fuck?
So the Israelis continuing the war is something that I think is a bit of like a test case. Same thing with the Iranian demand that the ceasefire should also encompass Lebanon and Gaza. It's a way for them to show solidarity with the Lebanese and the Gazans, but it's also for two other purposes. One is because of recognition that if the war continues over there, the spillover risk is significant that it will come back to Iran at some point. It already has twice in the last 2 years. And since the Iranians are looking for an enduring end to the war, it requires then that the Lebanese and the Gazan theater is also calmed down. But also, I think it is because this is a way for the Iranians to test. Is the United States capable of reigning in Israel? Is it willing to reign in Israel? Because if the United States is not willing or capable of doing this, what is the value of a ceasefire with the United States? If the Israelis can then restart the war whenever they want, and on top of that, they will have the ability to drag the US into the war again. And as a result, this, I think, is going to, they're looking at this to see what the Trump administration will do. Now, of course, from the Israeli standpoint and from the Emirati standpoint, I suspect that they're doing this precisely because they want to ruin the ceasefire. The Israelis were completely against this ceasefire. And I think that if it is true that the Emiratis was behind these attacks, if it is true, then I think it...
You think
I find it likely. I find it likely that this could very well be the case. I think we have seen clear messages from the Emirati side that they did not want to see an end to the fight. And this further increases the suspicion that they were lobbying in favor of the war prior to the war. At the end of the day, the Emiratis are a close ally of Israel at this point. This is also causing a significant split within the GCC. You have had GCC states that have worked very, very hard to prevent this war. And now the Emiratis are not only having probably played a role in favor, but also now potentially working to make sure that the ceasefire collapses. Now, this will then, if it is proven that this is the case, I think you will see the Iranians go very hard at the Emirates. I think they have not gone as hard as they probably could, but it will also then potentially lead to a scenario. And this is something that probably the Emiratis are quite worried about. A scenario in which the ceasefire in some ways is in place, in some ways it is not. The United States may simply exit this war, and it will be Israel and the Emirates that will continue it on its own. And that's going to be a very different type of a war, a much tougher equation for both of them. And the United
You mean much tougher invasion for the UAE, not for Iran? How's it a tougher equation with Iran if they're only fighting the UAE?
No, I'm saying that it will be tougher both for Israel and the UAE if they don't have the US on their side. I mean, even the Israeli air defense systems are going to be quite compromised if they don't have active American support. And Trump is going to be in a position in which clearly he wanted to get out of this war. He had realized that this war was a massive mistake. If we're to believe the New York Times account, and a lot of it I can say that is very compatible with what I've been hearing throughout this period, Trump, and I've said it on this show several times, Trump was sold a false perception and idea of what this war would be like by the Israelis, telling him that this would be extremely easy, it would be very quick, and as a result, this would lead to a glorious quick victory for Trump, which clearly was not the case. I think he has now realized that that was all false. He's managed to get himself out of this war. Why would he go back in? What is it militarily that has changed that would make one believe that a second bite at the apple would actually work? At the end of the day, the Iran still have the ability to hold the global economy hostage, and it will continue to do so as long as the geography is what it is. Yeah. So I just have a very hard time seeing that Trump would make such a decision to go back in. And as a result, the ceasefire ultimately may be successful from an American standpoint because it gets the US out of this war, but the rest of the region will still deal with a war that at least initially will be Israel and the UAE, and whether they can sustain that war or not remains to be seen.
That's some crazy stuff you're saying. I agree with it. It's actually, everything makes sense. But like the UAE with an alliance with Israel against Iran, like that's how, if the US could not beat Iran, how does Israel believe it could do it with the UAE or other Gulf countries?
It's a fantastic question. But the first part of it, I think we shouldn't be so surprised at. Look, at the end of the day, the Abraham Accord was an anti-Iran alliance that was being built. It had in many ways already existed behind the scenes, in which there was a convergence between some of the Arab states and Israel against what they saw as a common threat. This now made it public, but it also took it to a completely different level in terms of the military collaboration between the two sides. I always found it to be astonishingly foolish by the UAE. That's not to say that the UAE doesn't have legitimate grievances against Iran or vice versa, but it's because of the fact that the UAE's problems with Iran are far more resolvable than Iran's and Israel's problems with each other. And by essentially going into this arrangement, the UAE attached itself to Israel's problem with Iran, while at the same time being physically much closer to Iran than what Israel is.
That's why it doesn't make sense. Such a dangerous position to take for any Gulf country, to be with a giant that is Iran, to cause Iran is the country you should be at peace at, and Israel is the one you shouldn't worry about. If you want to have clashes with Israel like Turkey, it doesn't matter. Israel's not going to invade you. It's too small to be able to have a ground operation on your territory. So Israel is not the concern. Iran is the concern. So turning Iran into an enemy, striking their refinery when Trump is reaching a peace deal. We're assuming this is true. I posted that. Exactly. I find that hard to believe, but why would it?
But keep in mind the messaging coming out.
Iran has lied before.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Go back to some of the first days of the war. Ali Larijani said that the Iranians had killed 500 Americans. There was no evidence for that whatsoever. They had injured a very large number. Perhaps they thought that they had been killed.
The US is striking Iran.
Where is this coming from now?
Just came in now from one of the Telegram groups, waiting for it. Another one of my two Telegram groups sent it.
Well, I mean, if that ends up being the case, that the U.S. is at it, it is attacking again. When there's not going to be any peace talks or any talks in Islamabad, and this would clearly then just cause this attempt at a ceasefire to collapse. Less than 12 hours after it has been struck, and then we'll be back in a much worse situation. Then I think you will see significant escalation on all fronts and significantly higher oil prices in a completely different scenario on the oil markets that will be devastating for everyone, and it will be very damaging to the United States as well, if that is the case. But again, we have to really be very careful. I'm waiting for confirmation.
I'm waiting for confirmation, but I don't know how to make sense of it if it is the US. It made a lot of logical sense for Trump to walk away. It makes no sense. The other option just doesn't make sense, Trita. Why would Trump strike it?
Again, if the American side believes that the Iranians have violated the ceasefire because they retaliated against these attacks that were undertaken either by Israel or by Israel and the Emirates, then again, the US isn't choosing to go back into this war, because at least what we know at this point, or at least the information is coming out, is not suggesting that the Iranians started the latest round of attacks. And if they're responding to it and the US nevertheless decides to go back into the war, then I think we have a very, very odd situation. I have to say, I would be very surprised. But then again, we have to keep one thing in mind. A lot of our conversations are based on the idea that folks will make a rational decision. If rational decision-making was actually driving this, we would not be in this war in the first place.
It's fairly clear now that Trump's announcement of a ceasefire and peace negotiations was a farce. That's just an opinion piece, an attempt to drive down global energy costs and reassure global markets. The US and Israel clearly have no intentions of making peace with Iran.
Sorry, who wrote that?
So Iran is claiming it's the US.
Yeah. So, okay, this is very important piece of information in that case. There are elements in Iran who are against the ceasefire, just as they were against the ceasefire in June. This ceasefire has split the decision makers in Iran. I don't know if it's 50-50, but there are elements who believe it shouldn't have been agreed upon, despite the fact that it appears to have been agreed upon on Iran's terms. But there's a fear that it is causing a loss of momentum for the Iranians, and that the United States is not going to honor it anyways. And as a result, it will shift some of the momentum away from Iran, and that the Iranians should have just called Trump's bluff, stuck to their position, and essentially forced not a ceasefire, but a full end to the war from the outset, instead of a ceasefire followed by negotiations. So if you're in that camp, I would take any news coming out of Mer perhaps with a grain of salt, because they may have a self-interest in portraying this as an American attack, even if it wasn't.
What can you tell us about Mer? Do you know much about them? Who are they affiliated to? And are you seeing indications of a power struggle? Because I said that when Iran was striking the Gulf, I'm like, there must be a power struggle within Iran, a collapse in the leadership or something. And that could be factions within Iran that are striking the Gulf nations. And the excuse of the UAE is just a way to kind of justify these attacks, because they also struck Kuwait and Saudi. How does that make sense? How do you justify that?
So let me say, I don't think there was a significant power struggle, at least when it comes to striking the GCC states. It was clearly pre-planned from their end that if there was an attack, they would escalate horizontally very quickly. There has, of course, also been a lot of evidence coming out that many of these GCC countries have allowed the United States to use their airspace and territory for attacks against Iran. So, for instance, Kuwait, France 24 made an investigation and showed that at least on 2 occasions, Kuwait allowed HIMARS to be shot at Iran from Kuwaiti territory. Now, an important distinction here is, did this start right away, or did this start after the Iranians already had attacked the GCC? And at that point, the GCC states will say, well, if we're already being attacked, we should allow for some attacks from our territory as well. We don't know the answer. At least I don't know the answer to that. Also, another unknown is to what extent were some of these operations undertaken by the United States within their territory, but without the government's awareness. There's also a possibility of that scenario. But either way, it has led to a scenario on the Iranian side in which they have really lost their confidence in many of these GCC states, just as much as the GCC, of course, has lost much of their confidence in Iran. And that has lowered the resistance towards striking many of these different countries. And again, I think ultimately, in the long run, this is going to create a lot of problems between Iran and the GCC. It's going to take a lot to overcome some of these challenges. But the fact that Iran struck in the beginning against those bases, Iran had said that for a very long time. If there's an attack on Iran, they will go after the bases. The question is more, why was there also attacks against non-bases, hotels and other things? Now, it turned out later on, the US who had moved a lot of its troops to certain hotels in Bahrain and in Kuwait. And the Iranians, their intelligence had identified that, and they started attacking those hotels.
What about the international airports? What about the hotel in the UAE?
These are, at the end of the day, these are clearly war crimes. Just as much as many of the attacks that the Israelis and the Americans are conducting in Iran are war crimes. And this is part of the danger of the entire movement in this direction. Pete Hegseth and his approach in the Pentagon is in which he says that he's not going to abide by any of these laws of war norms around the use of force, even though many of those laws of war are not international law, they're actually part of US law. If that ends up becoming the standard, and then you're going to see everyone violating these laws and commit war crimes, and it would be a devastating situation for everyone. These laws were put in place after the atrocities of World War II in order to make sure that we avoided that massive loss of civilian life. It is in everyone's interest that those laws are respected and upheld.
I'm starting to believe more and more there is some sort of power struggle in Iran.
Oh, so let me add to that, because you're right. At this point, I think it is. At this point, once you have
now, just
an actual negotiation.
Channels, only mayors reporting the airstrikes and the attacks.
Yeah.
Only
So look, once you have a proposal that has been put in front of the Iranians and the Iranians are engaged in negotiations, this always happens. Now, suddenly, the unity that could exist in a state of war starts to fray when there are options to get out of the war, and you're going to have elements who don't want to do it, or who think that the terms are the wrong way, et cetera, et cetera. And this is actually, I remember 15 years ago or so, one of the reasons why the United States was pushing for negotiations with the Iranians on the nuclear issue was actually to help increase those frictions within the Iranian system as a whole. So at this point, I think it's absolutely clear that there's a high likelihood of that. We already are seeing how some elements there are not happy with the ceasefire. They think it was a mistake. They point to the ceasefire in June, arguing that that was a mistake. Now, whether that will then lead to a very significant rift in the apparatus remains to be seen.
The only news outlet has just been confirmed now. No other news outlets even reporting bombings in Iran. Only Mirror News.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what to make of this. Is there? I know. I'm just trying to decipher. Is there a power struggle? Is there information warfare? Is there confusion? Is there maybe strikes? You know, before there were attacks on Iran, and Iran tries to downplay them because they don't want to escalate. So could there be airstrikes on Iran, but Iran's trying to downplay these airstrikes to avoid having to respond and break the ceasefire? And does Iran really want the ceasefire? Because a lot of people saying Iran has the upper hand. They don't need the ceasefire.
Just as much as you may have elements who want to play up these attacks, you may also have elements on the other side who have a vested interest in playing down the attacks. It is extremely difficult to know exactly what is happening because of, in the fog of war, information is in and of itself a weapon, and misinformation even more so a weapon. So all of those things, all of those potential explanations you put forward may actually be valid, and they're not mutually exclusive. Did Iran want a ceasefire? At the end of the day, they made that decision. Does it mean that there are no elements of opposition to it inside? There clearly are. Some of them are very loud, arguing that this was a mistake.
You've heard about the opposition? You've gotten reports?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No.
Oh,
yeah,
wow, okay.
Definitely. I mean, it's open. I mean, it's not... those commentaries, if you look at Persian language Twitter, you see it. You see that there's a lot of... again, it's difficult to make an assessment how strong that opposition is. I spoke to a person this morning who said that amongst the very hardcore elements of the Islamic Republic within their base, people were crying on the streets because they believe that this is a defeat for them to agree to ceasefire when they think that momentum is on their side.
Commander of the IRGC, there's just a statement now. Commander of the IRGC's Aerospace Force, he says, an attack on Hezbollah is tantamount to Iran. Tehran is gearing up for a heavy response to the Zionist regime's brutal crimes. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has begun his address. So he's addressing the nation right now. What's happening there? We didn't even get a chance to talk about Lebanon because all the developments are happening. And I thought we were going to just talk about Lebanon, but now suddenly there's bombings in Iran. There's no bombings in Iran. The US is bombing. Israel's bombing. No one's bombing. It's all a false flag. And now Lebanon, there's a statement that Iran will retaliate to the attacks on Lebanon. Not surprising. I've talked about there's a massive shift in the balance of power in the region. The Iran today is very different to the Iran after the 12-day war. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a very heavy-handed response. I don't think Iran will abandon Hezbollah as they did after the death of Nasrallah. They're too strong for that. They know they have leverage. But what will Netanyahu do?
Well, again, going back to what I said earlier on, for the Iranians, standing up for Hezbollah is part of what they need to do in order to make sure that the axis is not refractured, that they show that they're there for Hezbollah, mindful of the fact that Hezbollah entered the war with Israel during this period as well. in support of Iran. So there is a reciprocity that is necessary there. But it's also because what I said earlier on, this is a way of testing the United States. If the United States cannot control Israel, then what is the value of a deal with the United States? Mindful of the fact that the Israelis will restart the war, and the United States doesn't seem to have the ability to stay out of wars that Israel starts. Now, what is happening on the Israeli side? Look, yesterday you saw shock in Israel. You saw criticism against Trump for the first time. You saw, of course, a lot of politicians in Israel took the opportunity to attack Netanyahu. Lapid said something along the lines that this is the worst political debacle or fiasco for Israel in all of its lifetime, because a deal was struck in which Israel was not part of, but it is expected to be beholden to. So from the Israeli side, I think right now in the last 10 hours, there's been a lot of activity in Washington and in Tehran amongst those who want to see this work, trying to figure out how do you ceasefire deal actually become a real thing. And in Israel, there's been a lot of activity going on in which the government has been trying to figure out how do we sabotage this deal? How do we make sure that it collapses as quickly as possible?
Could it be, there's some people speculating that Saudi and the UAE are attacking Iran. Is that a possibility that Saudi is part of it as well? It just sounds suicidal. Like that is insane, the regions of that state. That the fact that we're talking about Saudi and the UAE attacking Iran to drag the US back into the war, while Israel wants to drag the US into the war while Trump's trying to get out of it. Trump is in such a bad spot, but the region is in such a bad spot. The Gulf nations are just scrambling right now.
If the ceasefire was genuine, or the intent behind it was genuine on Trump's side, which I think it was, then you are right. It would be suicidal for the Saudis to, go on the offensive now, enter the war fully at a time when the US is pulling out, either in the hope that they would be able to drag the US back in. I think that would be a very costly thing. The American public is dead set against this war, and Trump's base is increasingly dead set against this war. And on the other hand, if they fail, they're then sitting next to a very angry and vengeful Iran that has shown its capability to withstand American bombing. If it could withstand American bombing, rest assured it could withstand Saudi bombing. So it sounds very odd to me. And I wouldn't be surprised that there also is a lot of disinformation being spread by those who want to sabotage the ceasefire on all sides to try to confuse the situation as much as possible by saying that the Emiratis are involved, saying that the Saudis are involved, etc. I can see a degree of plausibility for the Emiratis to have done this. I find it far more unlikely that the Saudis are doing it.
I just don't think the Emiratis will do it, man. The only reason is I just think that they're too vulnerable. I've said this so many times throughout the war, their whole economy is based on safety and security and stability and neutrality. They throw this in the most dangerous way imaginable. And also, would Trump really fold? Do you think if Netanyahu can't drag Trump into a war, can't tell him what to do, the Gulf is? The Gulf that agree. Got neglected for Israel?
I agree with what you're saying, except for the last part about that, their position has been neutrality. The Emiratis have not been neutral. They've been very active, particularly in the Horn of Africa. And they have ended up being on pretty bad terms with almost all GCC countries, with the exception of Bahrain. But at the same time, I agree with you that this would be quite suicidal. But just go back and listen to what a lot of UAE officials have said in the last week. I mean, they've gone out and said that we will join a fight to retake the islands, etc., and using very, very strong language. So that's part of the reason I say it's not implausible that they're doing it. I find it more implausible that the Saudis are committing such a mistake.
Netanyahu just said Iran is weaker than ever. Israel is stronger than ever. We have more goals to achieve, and we will achieve them either through negotiations or by reviewing the fighting. Fingers on the trigger.
Well, that's an interesting statement. Again, I haven't seen the full statement, but prior to this, Netanyahu...
He's making address to the nation now, so I'm kind of giving you the kind of key quotes as it happens.
Prior to this, suddenly we saw Netanyahu started to say that Iran is no longer an existential threat to Israel. This is probably the first time in his life that he has uttered that sentence. And I think that was because he wanted to also create a narrative, the beginnings of an off-ramp for Israel, to say that the Israelis have now achieved their objective. Iran is no longer an existential threat, despite the fact that they have the missiles still, despite the fact that they have the nuclear program, et cetera, et cetera. And as a result, be able to pull himself out of this war, because again, once the US is not in this war, it will be very difficult for the Israelis to sustain its war efforts.
There's an alliance. I feel like there's an alliance right now. All right, so Mary's News again is reporting air defense active in the cities of Isfahan, Kerman, Paran, and Rabat Karim. No impacts reported though. How would there be air defense systems active without impact? The fighter jets are there to strike, unless it's a recon, it's a surveillance operation by the US or Israel. Number one. Number two is Mera News one of the top news outlets in Iran? Just so I know how to.
It is what it is.
It is.
Yeah, no, it's one of the top.
List it as unreliable.
No, well, I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not unreliable, unfortunately. I mean, the state of the media is not what it used to be globally. And in the Iranian case, it's never been particularly strong. But it is definitely on the hardline side, has connections to the IRGC. So again, you should interpret it with an understanding of where it's coming from, treating it similarly as you would treat a story coming out of Fox News, for instance. Netanyahu
just said, again, the ceasefire does not include Hezbollah. Today, it suffered the hardest blow since the beeper, September 17th. This is a beeper incident. That he just said that now. So what? Is Trump? Is he not listening to Trump? Is Trump giving him the go-ahead? How long will that go on for? Does that mean the wars are going to go on because Iran's going to respond?
It seems like the U.S. has caved to this because the White House come out and said that Lebanon is not included in the ceasefire. The Pakistani Prime Minister yesterday said that Lebanon is included on the ceasefire. Now, it's also important to understand, though Trump has said that the basis of the negotiations will be Iran's 10 points, and the 10th point is about Lebanon, it does not mean that the 10 points have been accepted. That will be the basis of the negotiations, not necessarily the end of the negotiations. And as a result, when it comes to the exact ceasefire right now, there can be a disagreement between them as to whether it already encompasses Israel or not. Now, the Iranians are insisting that it should. The US has come out and said that it shouldn't. But the Iranians are going to push this line in order to test and see whether the United States and Trump has the willpower to rein in Israel.
What do you make of this one then, Trita? A report came out that, there it is. I think that's Axios. Or one of the outlets. Let me see which one it is. I think it's Axios. A White House official says the 10-point peace plan that Iran publicly released on Wednesday differs from the plan that Trump said was, quote, workable basis on which to negotiate. The official declined to elaborate on the difference, but said Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, was expected to clarify it at 1 p.m. briefing, which isn't how long? What's the time now? So what do you make of that now? So does the ceasefire, is it collapsing in front of our eyes?
It may, I mean, again, it may very well end up not even surviving till Friday. Look, there are variations of the 10 points. I don't know if it's because of some of it seems to be translation differences, but some of it is substantive differences. There are versions of it that does not include an acceptance of enrichment on Iranian soil, and there's versions of it that does include it. So there may be some confusion on that point. It may be that what we have seen publicly is not at all what is being shown to the US privately. So there could be some plausibility in that. And it could also well be that what we have seen publicly was the first original Iranian proposal, and that this proposal has been amended somewhat during these back and forth. And as a result, the one that has been accepted is different from the one that we have seen publicly.
Do you think Iran will have control of the Strait of Hormuz?
I find it very likely that at the end of this process, the Iranians will continue to control the Strait of Hormuz together with Oman, and they will use that to be able to collect tolls, which again is not going to generate a tremendous amount of money, but that will give Iran a certain leverage geopolitically, and the Iranians will use it to try to restore economic relations with Asian countries that had left Iran as a result of US sanctions.
More media outlets, sorry, as we wrap up, more media outlets are reporting now. Apparently, other Iranian media outlets are reporting that there's airstrikes against Mazdaran in Tehran.
Mazdaran, okay. And that's, are they saying that those are Israeli or American?
No idea. No information on that.
Yeah.
They're just saying, the news outlets just saying there's strikes on this. There's a massive airstrike, not airstrikes, in Mazdaran. Mazdaran, sorry. You know what that is? Is it significant?
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, it's further to the northeast of Iran, and it's one of those areas in which, in the past, the Israelis had greater difficulty reaching. You know, during the June war, the Iranians pushed a lot of their missile launchers to the east of the country to put them further out of the reach of Israel and the United States. And they still can reach Israel from those areas, but it's harder for the Israelis to reach and take them out. No, this is going to be very interesting to see how it evolves. But I think you know, regardless of some of these details, I would not expect that the United States will fully go back into this war. I think they would have a devastating effect for Trump politically here in the United States. Moreover, if it turns out that you know, even 24 hours after the war, Israel is capable of sabotaging the ceasefire, then what value does any negotiations with Trump have? It essentially means that he's not even in control of his own foreign policy, that the real address is in Israel, and there's not going to be any negotiations with the Israelis. So I think for the US's own credibility, it will require some firmness from the United States if it wants the ceasefire to work, if it wants to get out of this war.
Caroline Levitt speaking as well. Final question. She's just started now. Final question for you, Trita, is a speculative question that we all want to hear. What's going to happen? What do you think? How do you think it's going to look like by the end of the month?
I find the most likely scenario one in which the talks fail. There is no agreement, but there is a non-agreement status quo that emerges out of this, in which the Iranians continue to have control of the straits. They will charge tolls of Asian and European countries. The United States will wash its hands of the Strait of Hormuz because it doesn't affect the US as much as it affects these other countries. The US is not importing oil from the Persian Gulf in large amounts. But at the same time, there will not be any sanctions relief for the Iranians, which will be a huge blow to them because there's no agreement. And then the question, and that will create a new, not particularly stable status quo, but nevertheless a new scenario. And the question is, how long will that last? Will it break down into further warfare? Or will it at some point lead to a new round of negotiations in which perhaps the Iranians put more nuclear matters on the table in order to be able to get sanctions relief? But I find, again, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I would be frankly stunned if Trump commits this mistake twice in 2 months, that he goes back into a war that simply is not winnable militarily.
Yeah. As we wrap up, there's multiple US Air Force shadow tankers are now airborne from Israel.
Yeah, we'll see exactly what happens. Yeah.
Trita, always a pleasure to speak to you, man.
Good to be with you. Thanks so much.
Talk to you soon. Thank you so much. Bye. All right, everyone, we're going to have Dimitri joining us now. Dimitri's been to Iran, as you know. You heard my interview with him earlier, but I'm just getting reports now. Let me ask for confirmation. But yeah, multiple US Air Force shadow tankers, so the refueling tankers, are airborne from Israel. There's a bombing campaign happening in Iran right now. It does not mean the ceasefire has ended, even though in definition, in theory, it has ended. Yeah, Iran. Right, I'm saying it seems the US is bombing Iran at the moment, possibly in coordination with Israel. Even I say likely, but that just could be, Friday's a negotiation day, and that could be just all part of the negotiations that are happening. Caroline Levitt is speaking as we speak right now. I won't stream the whole thing because you'll probably say a lot of fluff that is not worth listening to, but the team is watching it, and I'll mention the important comments that she says. We do know Netanyahu just spoke, he finished. All he said that we won, we'll beat Iran one way or another, diplomatically, or I think he said diplomatically or militarily, we will beat Iran. And the ceasefire does not include Hezbollah, which is kind of a finger in Trump's face. Seems Trump caved to Netanyahu. In the meantime, now there's multiple media outlets in Iran saying there's bombings happening in Iran in multiple locations. The air defenses have been active for over 20 minutes. And it seems there's multiple parties to this that are trying to drag Trump into this war. That's why I applauded Trump earlier. Remember, I told you guys that it's actually, so Dimitri will join in about 4 minutes. He'll be joining 4 to 5 minutes. There's multiple parties trying to drag Trump into this war, and I've been trying to get him not to walk away from the war. Israel being obviously one of them. Members of his own cabinet is another. members of the Iranian government, the IRGC, as we've seen now, it looks like some of them do want this war to continue. And Trita said that there's a lot of anger that the war's ending. I think a lot of people want to avenge the death of Khamenei. And reports that potentially UAE and Saudi also want the US to enter the war. So all this is alleged. We don't know for sure. Israel's probably the easiest one to guess that they do want the war to continue. But even they may not want it to continue. They might not want it to continue. I'm trying to get more information for you guys on the bombing in Iran. So the team's looking into it to try to get more information. The Israeli Security Cabinet will convene tonight to discuss a possible preemptive attack on Iran, according to Israeli Channel 11. Khan 11 reports that Israel's security establishment has information that Iran is considering launching missiles towards Israel due to the ongoing raids in Lebanon. The Security Cabinet tonight will discuss all possible scenarios. So Iran did say they will retaliate for the strikes in Lebanon. Israel said they will continue attacking Lebanon. I wouldn't want to be Trump right now. What a fucking mess to be in. What a freaking bad mess he created. So he's responsible for it. But we're in a situation now where Israel continues to bomb Lebanon. They bombed the hell out of Lebanon early in the morning, tried to kill Hezbollah's leader. Iran said they'll retaliate. They closed the Strait of Hormuz again. Iran's foreign minister, Arachi, just said, the Iran-US ceasefire terms are clear and explicit. The US must choose ceasefire or continued war via Israel. It cannot have both. The world sees the massacres in Lebanon. The ball is in the court of the US, and the world is watching whether it will act on this commitment. He knows how they're very good with PR. Very good with PR. And he quote tweeted the Prime Minister of Pakistan. So his Prime Minister of Pakistan has been said there's ceasefire violations. He quote tweeted him and said, Iran, the US is Israel's dragging the US into this war, and the US has a choice. Either get dragged into the war because Israel doesn't want to stop bombing Lebanon, or rein Trump in. So this is a very important day for everyone watching on how much influence Israel has over Trump, or how much Trump has influence over Israel. This will decide it over the next day or two, because Iran is saying, Trump, if you can't rein in Israel, this war is going to continue. And if the war continues, no one can argue anymore, including myself, because I've been making that argument, that Israel is not playing a key role, if not the most important role, in this war continuing right now. That statement says it all. To be honest, Arachi's right. He said Lebanon should be part of the ceasefire. Whether it's a fair request or not, it's a different discussion. He quote tweeted the statement by the Prime Minister of Pakistan, the mediator, that said there's been ceasefire violations. And the mediator said Lebanon should be included in the ceasefire. Dimitri's joining in 2 minutes, guys. So you got Iran, another party to it, and the mediator said Lebanon is part of it. And Trump suddenly saying after Netanyahu says, oh, it's not part of it. And Trump is like, yeah, Lebanon's not part of it. You can't tell me this is Trump speaking for himself when he repeats the same thing Netanyahu said, opposite to what the counterparties in the deal, the mediator and the counterparty has said in the deal. It's fucking ridiculous. I cannot believe that this is even an option. I discounted Israel's ability to drag Trump into this. Yes, it's very significant. So we know there's stratotankers on the way to Iran. There's bombings in Iran right now. Iran struck the Gulf earlier. Iran's about to strike Israel. Israel's preparing to preemptively or retaliatory strikes on Iran as they continue to bomb Lebanon. I don't know how this is a ceasefire, but if anything, this is probably one of the worst days in the war for Lebanon, and a pretty bad day for the war. Another day for the Gulf, same as always. A pretty bad day for the Gulf. Iran's being bombed. I don't know how badly it's being bombed. That's probably one of the worst ceasefires I've seen in a very long time. It could become an incredible ceasefire in a couple of days. But we've always said the Middle East is messy, and that's why we've said it. So there's been no important statements for Caroline Levitt. Let me see if just like checking the group with my team if there's anything they sent before Dimitri joins. Let me see anything Caroline Levitt. Thanks to the unmatched excellence of our warriors at the direction of the Commander-in-Chief, the world's just witnessed a historical, swift, and successful military triumph. That's why we didn't stream it, guys. Iran is no longer capable of delivering weapons to its proxies in the region. They're still delivering weapons to Hezbollah. I'm going to make fun of it. Meanwhile, Iran continues to deliver weapons to Hezbollah. So that's another thing. And she also said, let me see what else said. Thanks to the unmatched excellence. Yep, great. This is a victory for the United States of America. Yeah, it's a victory for everybody. Meanwhile, sorry, Dimitri join any second, guys. Meanwhile, Iran has claimed victory. So has Israel. Seems everyone's victorious. Seems everyone is victorious. I'll get a lot of hate for that one as well. So that's another comment by Caroline Levitt. Again, it proves why we didn't stream her clips. But yeah, guys, this is an update here. I'll be asking all these questions to Dimitri, who's been to Iran. I want to get a sense of Dimitri if there is a. So we're doing an internet test to him very quickly, but I want to see if there is actually a split within Iran. Because when we had those reports between Mirror News, Trita Parsi told us there's a lot of people in Iran that don't want the war to end, and those strikes on the Gulf don't make sense to me. No leader of the Gulf in their right mind will strike Iran right now. They will not force Trump into it. They'll alienate Trump. Unless they're doing it in conjunction with Israel, but they would not do this without Trump's okay. You're talking about Trump allies that house American bases. That Trump pulls out these air defense systems from those regions. They're in a bad spot. All these countries. He pulls out the U.S. bases from those regions. They would have given him an excuse for it if they're sabotaging those peace deals. So I really don't think the Gulf struck Iran, and I really don't think. I don't know why Iran said the UAE struck it. My bet would be some factions within Iran are trying to end the ceasefire. Let me see here what else is happening. 2 seconds, guys. I'm just checking with the team. All right, nothing else interesting from. I'll give you guys a quick recap before we go with Dimitri, because there's nothing interesting from Caroline yet. If there is, I'll let you know. So I'll give you guys a recap so far what we have. There was heavy, so there were really strong airstrikes earlier today on the on refineries in Iran. Iran retaliated by striking the Gulf. The Gulf have not retaliated. They've talked about interceptions. Netanyahu said the ceasefire was not a surprise to us. That came in a few minutes ago, by the way. It was a surprise to him, according to all reports. And I believe the reports. I don't believe Netanyahu. I think he was surprised and pissed off at the ceasefire. Caroline Levitt said the U.S. now has, Iran now has 0 submarine vessels. 97% of Iran's once massive inventory of more than 5,000 naval mines has also been targeted and destroyed. Yeah, they still control the Strait of Hormuz. Funny how that works. All right. And then another one. Does Israel have the ultimate say over Trump and us? We'll find out. Someone's asking that in the comments. My team sent it to me. We'll find out. I'll ask Dimitri that question. But this is a statement by Caroline. It's like 97% of Iran's once massive inventory of more than 5,000 naval mines has also been targeted and destroyed. The same way 80% of missiles launches, 90%, yeah, bring up Dimitri. 90% of missile launches in Iran were destroyed. 97% of the mines, according to Caroline Levitt, were destroyed, Dimitri. Iran has no more mines left. 97% have been destroyed. I'm sure
I thought it was all gone. They left 3%.
3% somewhere hidden.
That's outrageous. How did they allow 3% to get through?
I don't know. That is disgusting. How could they let this? This is like those missile launches. They magically move from 80 to 50. But what's happening, man? I know you got a lot of sources in Iran. I'm hearing there's bombing right now in Iran. Is that true? There's airstrikes, and who's behind it?
Well, I'm pretty sure they just bombed a refinery. The name of that island, don't have it at hand. I think it's Laval, or I had not heard of the refinery before. That I think is certainty. I haven't spoken
the one
to
from
any.
The morning. Al Rafal,
Yeah,
the one from the morning. Yeah.
Yes, which purportedly was bombed by the United Arab Emirates with Mirage jets. So whether there's bombing going on inside Iran, I don't know. I haven't had communication with people inside Iran for the last couple hours because I was trying to get some desperately needed sleep. But look, Mario, this deal, this 10-point plan, of course, it's if it were to become the basis of a long-term agreement between the United States and Iran, it would constitute a catastrophic defeat for the Trump regime. But what's really, I think, of more immediate importance is that it's a complete and utter disaster for Israel. Israel does not want to see Iran, thrive, and that's exactly what would happen if the sanctions were lifted and the Iranian assets that were frozen were returned to Iran, and Iran were basically empowered to impose a toll on ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran would become a regional superpower. Arguably, absent the nuclear weapons arsenal that Israel possesses, it arguably is the most powerful state in West Asia right now. But certainly if this deal were to be accepted, it would be the regional hegemon, and Israel will do everything conceivable to destroy this deal. I think that's just inevitable, absolutely inevitable. And we're seeing that right now.
Yeah, and Netanyahu, right after the deal, he said Lebanon's not included. And then the next day, Trump agrees with him. I'm starting to worry how much influence Netanyahu has over Trump. I'm worried that Israel's pulling a lot of the strings behind the scenes right now. It's just, I'm not finding any other explanation for them. Israel's bombing the hell out of Lebanon, knowing that Iran will retaliate and close the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah. One possible interpretation of what's going on here, it wouldn't surprise me at all, is that Trump and Netanyahu have agreed to another deception operation to give Israel an opportunity to focus exclusively on Hezbollah. So do a deal, try to arrange a circumstance where Iran suspends, at least briefly, its attacks on Israel. So Israel's air defenses and aerial forces are completely focused on the destruction of Lebanon and Hezbollah. And then when Israel finishes the job, assuming it can do so, or at least inflicts as much damage on Hezbollah as possible, resume the war on Iran. So that might be the only purpose of this thing. It might be just to give Israel an opportunity, a brief opportunity to focus exclusively on Hezbollah, which has been inflicting very significant casualties on Israel. Who knows? But the idea that Israel is just going to sit idly by and allow this deal to be done is a fantasy. The only way this is going to happen is if Trump threatens to withdraw all forms of support from Israel and is believed by Israel to be serious. He would have to, and this is, I wouldn't exclude the possibility that Trump will do that in the current desperate circumstances, but I'm deeply skeptical that he will use his leverage over Israel to stop it from undermining this deal.
I was thinking that as well. It just doesn't look like it, man. It doesn't look like it. Like if there's bombing right now, there's multiple sources of Iran getting bombed right now. And there's stratotankers, American stratotankers flying out of Israel to refuel the fighter jets, I assume. I don't know if it's American or Israeli fighter jets, but that means US is directly or indirectly involved in those bombings. How do you make sense? Why is Trump, who I believe wants to end this war, why is he striking Iran right now?
Well, like I said, one plausible interpretation is they're just trying to get Iran to suspend its attacks on Israel long enough for Israel to inflict as much damage
as south of Lebanon, or invade. Yeah. My guess is they want to occupy south of Lebanon as quickly as possible before the ceasefire takes effect, so then they control the south of Lebanon post ceasefire, and that's a different discussion.
Yeah, and this is very standard, by the way, on the part of Israel, that when a deal for a ceasefire is about to be done, it goes hog wild, just goes crazy. It did this in the case of the 2024 ceasefire with Lebanon.
Yeah,
in the 24 hours leading up to the deal coming into effect, it just went just a murder spree across Lebanon. But then, it did continue to attack Lebanon every day after that, but at a much lower level of intensity. So that too could be going on here. This could be a precursor to some kind of at least a de-intensification of the war upon Lebanon. But as I say, Mario, come on, man, look at that deal. Do you actually think Netanyahu is going to live with that deal? This is existential for Israel.
Yeah. I said that all day. I've been saying, if this deal passes, the 10-point plan, which now Trump is saying, by the way, there's a report Trump told Axios on New York Times that Trump does not believe. He said, this is not the point plan I knew about. He's really upset about it. So I don't know if Netanyahu convinced Trump to change his mind, or whether Iran is floating another, because I think there's a struggle. I want to get your thoughts on this. The same way there's a struggle within Trump's administration on people that don't want the deal. Israel doesn't want the deal. The majority of the administration there, Netanyahu's getting pummeled for it. Lebanon's the only country that probably wants the deal. There's Iran as well. Factions within Iran. It looks like there's factions there that also don't want the deal. Maybe they're the ones that are attacking the Gulf, trying to drag the Gulf into it. Maybe they want to avenge the Khamenei. Maybe they believe they have so much leverage they want the war to continue to think and get better terms. That's a possibility as well. You've been to Iran. You've spoken to them. You still speak to them. What do you make of that? The White House just said again just now, Lebanon is not part of the ceasefire. Caroline Levitt just confirmed it.
Yeah, there's no way that this deal is going to go for it. The Islamic Republic is not going to abandon Hezbollah now. There's absolutely no way. When they attacked Iran, Hezbollah came in force after basically just absorbing punishment for well over a year from those daily attacks in violation of the ceasefire. It came in force to support the Islamic Republic, And although it has inflicted very serious casualties on Israel, and driven the colonists from the northern settlements again, it has taken a lot of pain. So there's absolutely no way that the Islamic Republic is going to leave Hezbollah out of the ceasefire. This ain't happening. It's a deal breaker. If Trump sticks to this perspective, it's a deal breaker. It's over. Now, as to whether or not people
Caroline just said, brother, Iran's original 10-point plan. Sorry, she just making those statements now. Iran's original 10-point plan, Dimitri, was thrown in the garbage. A second condensed plan was submitted and accepted as a basis for talks. Trump's red line hasn't changed. No Iranian enrichment on Iranian soil.
The war will continue then. It's all over. I mean, why would Iran agree to suspend its enrichment, to give up permanently its enrichment, when it holds all the cards? And it has a right under international law to enrich uranium. It does. This is absolutely crystal clear. It has that right. It's Israel that's not a member of the Non-Nuclear Proliferation Treaty. Iran is. So that's not going to happen. This war is going to continue, and this was nothing but this is what it appears to be, is nothing but a joke. I mean, it's simply like two ships passing in the night. This war is going to continue, and it's going to intensify if they stick to this position. As to whether there's a constituency within the Iranian leadership that is trying to undermine this, I can't exclude that possibility, Mario. But man, those are pretty good terms for Iran.
Why would terms? Man, that 10-point plan would change the face of the Middle East. Iran would never look the same. It is insane. They would make $90 billion, $96 billion a year if they don't give any of it to Oman, just from tolling the toll booth at the Strait of Hormuz, which Trump said he'd want to be part of it. I don't know if Iran would Iran accept that under any circumstances. Would there be a business deal? Maybe the U.S. lifts sanctions and they can take a piece of the Strait of Hormuz.
I doubt it. I mean, well, first of all, they would have to pay reparations in full for Iran even to consider that, and the cost of reparations.
The Strait of Hormuz is the reparations, no?
Well, the plan doesn't say that. The plan says that there are reparations, and Iran gets to control the Strait of Hormuz, and it will dictate the terms upon which the ships pass through it. But why would you seek to undermine this deal if you actually believe that the Americans were serious about pursuing it? Why would you do that? This is manna from heaven for Iran. It's a complete and utter disaster for Israel, and by the way, for the autocracies of the Gulf. I mean, the Saudis must be horrified by this thing. They will be second-class citizens compared to Iran if this deal goes into effect. And who is going to protect them from their own population if all of those American soldiers leave? Who's going to protect the Bahraini autocracy from the predominantly Shia population of Bahrain if the Americans leave? The entire
but could those countries get closer? Could they get closer to Iran? Could that see a shift in the regional power?
They could, but I think that would lead ultimately to regime change in their own countries. The only reason why these vicious tyrannies have remained in place for so long is because of the protection of the United States military. I think that's the main reason why the U.S. military is there, actually, is to keep them in power, is to protect them from their own citizens. So you remove them, what guarantee do these autocrats have, these extraordinarily wealthy autocrats have, if they will remain in power? I can't imagine that they have any affection for this agreement either. So Trump has enormous pressure on him. And of course, there are the neocons within the U.S. government who are absolutely going to hate this deal. Like, can you imagine why people like, Rubio, John Bolton.
There's reports that even Witkoff was really upset by it, which is a surprise to me, but yeah.
I wouldn't worry about that shyster. He's not really going to have any power at the end of the day, but and he'll simply do what Israel tells him to do. But the other people within the U.S. government, people within the CIA, people within the Pentagon are going to despise and loathe this deal, the withdrawal of U.S. forces from this incredibly strategically important part of the world. The only way, I go back to what I've been saying from the outset, eventually Donald Trump is going to pay the piper because there's no way to unblock the Strait of Hormuz. But the U.S. is going to have to experience a lot more economic pain before it's brought to heel, in my opinion. I don't think it's ready. I don't think it has suffered enough.
There's only 2 ships that have gone through the Strait of Hormuz. So Caroline is saying the Strait of Hormuz is open. Only 2 ships have gone through. Like, this is probably, as I said just a few minutes ago, this is probably the worst ceasefire I've ever seen, Dimitri. Lebanon got pummeled more than ever. Iran's getting bombed. Iran's preparing to bomb Israel. The Strait of Hormuz is still closed. The US is still bombing Iran. The Gulf just got bombed. Oh, the only thing that improved are the markets, which tells you something.
Yeah, you can kiss that goodbye in about 48 hours. I think we're going to see an absolute explosion.
How much appetite is there for peace in Iran? You were there. That's, I think, is a very important question, because we don't look at Iranian media. We just try to speculate what they say based on the statements they make in English in most cases. And the statements they make for us, they want us to hear. Can you tell me more about the sentiment there? What was it when you were there? Were there people that wanted to end the war at their own terms, or they prefer to go on even more until they get very maximalist terms, or terms that maybe some people on the American side would consider maximalist?
I saw absolutely no indication that people there have an interest in negotiating at all. I remember one night we were walking through a protest, a pro-government protest, one of the many that we saw in Shiraz, and a woman was holding up a sign that said, "No negotiations between the angels of Minab and the demons of Epstein." I heard this sentiment expressed over and over and over again, collectively, individually, private conversations, on air. People didn't even want to negotiate, let alone make concessions of any kind. So I think that's likely going to, that the will to proceed is being hardened by the United States doing things like bombing universities, bombing Israel, destroying a synagogue, which it admitted it did, although it claims it was collateral damage.
Israel admitted to the destruction of the synagogue. Or the irony, yes. You strike a synagogue in Iran. The irony of that, Israel, the homeland for the Jewish people, strikes a synagogue in Iran, a synagogue that was built by Iran. That tells you a lot.
Yeah, and the videos are widely circulating of Iranian Jews condemning Israel for seeking vengeance for their anti-Zionism. This is a public relations catastrophe, to put it mildly, for Israel, but they seem to have lost all concern for the way they're perceived in the world anyways. And so I can't believe that this is going to have the effect of softening the will of the Iranians to fight. I think it's going to have exactly the opposite effect. This coming forward and saying, "Oh yes, we're going to give you what you wanted. The war is over. We're going to sit down. It's a workable basis for a deal." And then all of a sudden they escalate. And they escalate against Lebanon. They escalate against Iran. This is going to infuriate the population, and even more so the military leadership of the country.
So Caroline Levitt just commented on the bombing. She's not aware. So Caroline Levitt says she's unaware of the current explosions in Tehran. So who the fuck is bombing them? Israel saying they're not bombing them, but there's stratotankers flying from Israel, American stratotankers. And there's bombings across Iran that Iran's reporting, unless they're fabricating those, but they're on national TV. They're not going to make up explosions on national TV and show footage of it. So who the hell is bombing them? If you had to guess, who would it be? I would guess Israel. There's no way Saudi and the UAE would do it. Come on, like, I know maybe I could be wrong, but that just makes zero strategic sense. It's not going to drag Trump into it. It's going to make Iran an enemy of theirs, and they've already said it suffered enough. Dubai does a lot of business with Iran as well. Saudi less so, but they've been trying to improve relations. China has improved relations between the two, normalized-ish relations between them a few years ago. It makes zero sense. The only one that makes sense, unless Trump, is all a bluff, if it's Trump, or it's Israel trying to sabotage the war. We might be seeing right now a clash between the US administration and Netanyahu's administration, something we've been talking about for years. And the next few hours and days would dictate how much influence Israel has over Trump and over the US.
I think you're absolutely right. Although I wouldn't exclude the possibility that Trump is just lying through his teeth and is facilitating these attacks. But I think the most plausible interpretation of what's going on here is that Israel, because as I said, I don't want to repeat myself, but this is existential for Israel. This is an absolute disaster. It undermines everything that Netanyahu has ever sought in his political career for Israel. It undermines expansionism. It undermines the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. It undermines Israel's hegemonic position within the region. It undermines Israel economically. So I think that you're probably right that Israel is trying to undermine this. Although I have one question about that, and that is, who's refueling the Israeli fighter jets that are bombing?
Exactly. I think, I'll repeat, the next few hours and days will dictate. I'm going to read out all the statements for you from Caroline Levitt. The team just sent them to me, just so you know everything she said. And I'll read out Netanyahu's statements, which is barely anything. It's mainly Lebanon is not part of the ceasefire. Everything else is fluff. Well, Caroline Levitt. Lebanon is not part of the ceasefire that has been relayed to all parties involved in the ceasefire. Number one. Number two, she has Iranians who says that it was the Iranians who backed down, not President Trump. They agreed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Obviously, it's not open. They annihilated the Iranian Navy. But the Iranian Navy's, they still have the Strait of Hormuz closed. So they have the sea drones are still there. So I don't know what Navy she's talking about. The ones that don't matter, the big ships that don't really matter. The same way about Iran's Air Force. Iran didn't even use its Air Force, didn't expect to use its Air Force. Thanks to the unmatched excellence of our warriors, the direction of our commanders, the world has just witnessed a historically swift and successful military triumph. I'll skip commenting. Before Operation Epic Fury, Iran's Air Force flew 30 to 100 flights per day. Today, that number is 0. They still fly hundreds of drones. They have thousands of them. Iran's original 10-point plan was thrown in the garbage. She said thrown in the garbage. Okay,
Well,
but the White House just announced that J.D. Vance will be attending the negotiations. Earlier, Trump said he might not attend due to security concerns. Now J.D. Vance is attending. There is so much happening behind the scenes. That's such a messy negotiation. So different from what we're seeing between Russia and Ukraine, which we thought was messy back then. But at least that would meet. We know the terms. We know who's not budging. We know why. It wasn't like this all over the place.
yeah. You know, one sentence in Trump's post about this ceasefire is an absolute geopolitical earthquake and is undoubtedly causing shockwaves in Washington. And that sentence was simply, we received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. He has unleashed a tornado of opposition from within the U.S. government, from Gulf autocracies.
What was the exact quote? We received, what was it? We received what?
A 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. And everybody knows what the 10-point proposal is. I mean, I think you indicated that somebody said something about a condensed proposal. I don't know what that means. Is it fewer than 10 points? Well, that's not what his Truth Social post refers to. It doesn't refer to a condensed proposal. It refers to the 10-point proposal from Iran. Everybody knows what its principal provisions are. They've been publicly known for some time. And there is going to be a firestorm of opposition to any negotiation based upon that 10-point plan from a variety of powerful constituencies. Does Trump have the wherewithal to withstand that opposition? I doubt it. Not now, not unless the United States economy is in real trouble, which it will be soon enough. But to this point, the U.S. economy during this war has not really suffered materially. It's only beginning to see the impacts of the soaring price of oil and gas. So again, I think that this deal is premature. I think its time will come, maybe in a few weeks, maybe in a few months. But I just don't think the pain threshold of the United States has been reached.
Now the Iranian media is saying that there is, following reports of air defenses, other sources are saying there were just loud explosions of air defenses operating, but there were no bombings happening. So now we're getting reports that there are no bombings.
Mm-hmm. By the way, Mario, we should also stress that in Abbas Araghchi's, the foreign minister of Iran, is a statement yesterday about this ceasefire. He said, if attacks against Iran are halted, our powerful armed forces will cease their defensive operations. So what he's saying very clearly is we get to have the last shot. We have to have the last shot. Israel does not get to have the last shot. They're not going to lay down their weapons until they're...
So different from the 12-day war. So different.
Exactly. They're not going to stop until Israel has laid down its weapons. It's stopped firing for, I would imagine, at least a few hours or days. And then they've confirmed that Israel is going to restrain itself. Then they will stop their attacks. That in and of itself is maybe a deal breaker for Netanyahu. That would be a humiliation for Netanyahu to accept allowing Iran to have the last shot.
I don't get about these airstrikes. So Iranian media said the U.S. is attacking them, and there's bombings. They're being bombed. That Iran's being bombed. Then the U.S. stratotankers, according to the flight radar trackers, flew from Israel earlier. Israel's threatening a preemptive strike. Caroline says she has no idea about it all. And now sources are saying that there are no bombings. How does the media work in Iran? How reliable is it?
Well, I think it accurately reflects the official position of the government of Iran. if you want to know what the government of Iran is, at least wants the public to hear, it is a reliable communicator of the government's position. But I don't, I wouldn't characterize the Iranian media as being sufficiently independent of the government to contradict it in a moment of war such as this. They will communicate the messages that they are instructed to communicate. And then really the question is whether or not the government is being forthright with the public about its position. I believe that in essence, the government is being forthright about its position. It is not going to stop until Israel ceases firing and until the attacks on Lebanon end. And it is going to insist upon the core of this proposal being fulfilled. And it is not going to give up control of the Strait of Hormuz in our lifetimes. That ship has sailed, if you excuse the metaphor.
So do you think they'll ever walk away from Hezbollah? I think this is the big question that everyone's asking. Iran said no. Israel's trying to cash their bluff. Iran said they'll retaliate. They've already closed the Strait of Hormuz. How far do you think Iran will go on defending Hezbollah? Because when Nasrallah was killed, these days, a lot of people were talking about how Iran left Hezbollah hanging dry. One argument was that this is a strategic restraint, but it definitely seemed like they were throwing them under the bus. They didn't want confrontation with Israel, and they just let Hezbollah take the hits. Their leader got killed, and Iran barely retaliated with one strike, and then they kept allowing Hezbollah to get struck day in, day out for over a year by Israel. But we're seeing a very different stance right now. Could that change? And where is their red line, do you think? I feel like Israel's trying to occupy the south, and I really think Iran doesn't care about that because they care about Hezbollah sustaining and surviving. They might do a deal behind the scenes saying, all right, Israel, you occupy the south, but nothing more. And then there's going to be a ceasefire and you're not going to disarm Hezbollah. That could be a deal like this where, again, Lebanon is the loser.
Look, I wouldn't discount the power of faith in these circumstances. The leadership of Iran is devoutly religious. This is my feeling, Mario. They believe that they have a divine duty to stand by the members of the axis of resistance, particularly those that are more vulnerable than Iran is. This is not simply a cold, hard, geopolitical calculation for these people. So I, first of all, think that this would be profoundly inconsistent with their own position of conscience. And secondly, I'm not so sure that they did, leave Hezbollah out to dry. How did Hezbollah become so well armed between the November 2024 ceasefire and now? Where do those weapons go? It's firing fiber optic drones. It's just ravaging the armored brigades of the Israeli military with fiber optic drones. It's got the number of military operations it has mounted on a daily basis since it re-entered the war is vastly in excess of the number it was mounting even at the height of the first phase of this war. I mean, they're doing 30 to 50 military operations a day. Where did this weaponry come from? It's entirely possible that they consulted with the Iranian leadership and they agreed that there was going to have to be a period of rearmament, retraining, and reorganization of their communication methods, a reorganization of their security structure, because there were obviously serious breaches of security within Hezbollah. So this might have been a joint decision on the part of both of them, knowing full well that eventually there was going to be a resumption of the war. So I don't assume that they were abandoned. And in any event, whether or not there was an inclination during the last couple of years to kind of hang Hezbollah out to dry, Hezbollah has made an enormous sacrifice by re-entering the war. It's suffered tremendously. The people of Lebanon have suffered tremendously since it attacked Israel again in solidarity with the Islamic Republic. This would be devastating to Iran's standing in the region if it were to betray Hezbollah now.
I agree. And you said it. Sorry.
Yeah, I just don't see it happening. I can't exclude it entirely, but that would shock me.
What do you make of Trump's policy? Numerous agreements, lists, and letters are being sent out by people that have absolutely nothing to do with the USA, Iran. In many cases, they are total fraudsters, charlatans, and worse. They'll be exposed. There is only one group of meaningful points that are accepted to the US, and we will discuss them behind closed doors. So you talked about how Caroline Levitt is now, she's going to throw away the 10-point plan in the garbage. Trump was saying there's a 10-point plan yesterday, and now suddenly there is no 10-point plan. And there's a new plan of points. We don't know how many are, and we discussed behind closed doors. Do you think that's Netanyahu calling the shots right now?
I think, well, he undoubtedly continues to exercise considerable influence in the White House. Whether he's calling the shots or not, I don't know. But what that sounds to me like is there's just utter chaos in the White House. just chaos, which is exactly what you would expect Trump's Truth Social post to elicit. It is an earthquake. It's an absolute geopolitical earthquake. Any indication, just saying that I'm willing to negotiate on that basis is a catastrophic humiliation for the United States. So I think there's chaos in the White House, and we're going to see all kinds of contradictory signals coming out over the next few days. And it's not going to help the situation vis-a-vis Iran. I don't think these people have any patience for this kind of nonsense anymore.
So the explosion has been confirmed now as drones. These are the explosions where air defense is working against drones. I think this is just in the fog of war. Everyone got confused. Maybe even news outlets in the region got confused as well, especially where everyone's on edge. There's another report here that an aircraft owned by the Emirati state and used to fly, that's according to Mensch Osint, and used to fly UAE officials landed in Tel Aviv less than an hour ago. What do you think of the UAE and the Saudi? What do you think is their position in all this? Where is their allegiance? I've been always saying they're probably going to get closer to Iran, but there's indications now, some people at least saying that it's the opposite is happening. They want to weaken Iran, even if it means working with Israel. I don't know. I really think strategically it makes more sense, and if they're leaning in that direction as well, it makes more sense to improve relations with Iran, not the opposite. What do you think?
I think we have to distinguish between the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. Recall that just before the resumption of this war of aggression on Iran, the Saudis bombed Emirati forces or assets inside Yemen, which was quite a shocking.
Again, sorry, 2 seconds. Now, recently?
Just before, I think it was a couple of weeks before the resumption of the war of aggression. So probably it would have been February or perhaps January.
Before the war. I thought before you meant like now. Okay, yes, I'm aware of that. Yeah.
They're not acting in
relationship they have.
Yeah, they're not acting in lockstep, and they have different, considerations. Sort of the composition, for example, of the Saudi population. There's a significant Shia population there. I've always described the UAE as a Mossad operation masquerading as a country. I think they're going to pretty much do whatever Israel tells them to do. And frankly, if in fact they have attacked Iran, I think they're going to get obliterated. They're going to get absolutely obliterated.
That's why it doesn't make sense to me. That's why it doesn't make sense to me, man. That's why it doesn't make sense to me that they attacked it. Just militarily is such a foolish thing to do. Iran is massive, and they managed to strategically, not militarily, but strategically win against the US and Israel. The Emiratis are going to win, or the Saudis are going to win against Iran? That makes no sense.
No, it doesn't. If they're acting in the interests of the people of the UAE, it makes absolutely no sense. But who knows what the ruling elite is capable of doing? They're very much beholden to Israel. So I don't know, Mario, but they will get obliterated, and they may have already dug their own grave. If the Iranians are convinced that after this announcement they bombed a refinery in Iran, with using their own air force, oh boy, the wrath of God is going to come down on them. There's not a goddamn thing they can do. They are so vulnerable militarily to Iran's retaliatory strikes that it's all over for the UAE. So they'd better hope that the Iranians come to the conclusion that it wasn't them. All I know is reports, I can't verify them, that Mirage jets, which are operated by... That's all I know. But who knows in the fog of war whether in fact
I interrupted you. So Mirage jets that only the UAE owns them in the Gulf. They were the ones involved in the strikes on the refinery, the oil refinery. Again, I refuse to believe it. If it is true, I think it's one of the stupidest and most foolish things to do, no question. But for me, it makes no sense for the UAE or any Gulf nation. Saudi is the only one that probably makes sense because they have a pretty massive military. It's a massive country. Maybe they're gonna lose their mind, even though I don't think MBS is in that mindset. But all the others, it's too small to do something like that. It's too risky for them. I'll give you a few comments here from Carl. So go ahead.
I just want to point out something else, which your audience probably doesn't know. Very few people are talking about this right now. But I came from the Suda Bay naval base on the island of Crete to Cyprus a day ago. And what I discovered during the 3 or 4 days I was in the Suda Bay area is that the only nuclear-powered aircraft carrier of France had docked at the Suda Bay facility for what they said was refueling. It's the Charles de Gaulle. And the local media were reporting that on April 7th, yesterday, it was heading into the Eastern Mediterranean. And I could see clearly, it's on my YouTube channel, there were 10 Rafale fighter jets on the deck of this thing. There was also a Hawkeye surveillance aircraft, sophisticated surveillance aircraft on the deck of this thing. Is it a coincidence that it was heading into the Eastern Mediterranean on April 7th? Maybe. But that struck me as quite odd. Why were the French sending their only nuclear-powered aircraft carrier into the Eastern Mediterranean at this critically important moment that Trump himself set as the deadline for the elimination of the Iranian civilization, as he put it? So there could be a larger sort of, conspiracy going on amongst NATO powers, and this was all just another deception operation. When they attacked Iran, I think on the third day, or when they were set to meet for the third day for negotiations in the 12-day war, the Israeli media were crowing about the whole thing was just a deception operation. Well, this could just be another deception operation. And, not only is the United States and Israel in cahoots, but there could be other NATO powers that are in on this too. So I don't know. Maybe it's coincidental, but that's kind of odd that it was heading into the Eastern Mediterranean on that third day.
Unless no one cares about the French and they have no idea what's happening. Gulf nations didn't know. Netanyahu didn't know. If Netanyahu didn't know, the French definitely didn't know. Macron would have had no idea. So that's one other argument to be made. But in terms of deception, a lot of people are saying this could all be a bluff. It's happened so many times before. Probably Iranians are talking about it behind the scenes. Iranians are like, don't get out of your bunkers. Don't, there's reports that Mustafa sending, communicating via written notes and send it through a runner, I think they call them. Like someone just runs and gives it to someone else. And that gives it to someone else, etc. So that's how Mustafa's communicating. I think that will continue. Maybe they want a sense of complacency in Iran to have one final strike, get rid of the regime. That could be part of the plan. And then call for an immediate ceasefire once Mustafa's gone. You don't know.
Absolutely.
I have no fucking idea. Levitt said the president was very clear that... Sorry, go ahead.
I would just say, well, you can't exclude any possibility of dealing with these lying bastards. They're capable of anything.
By the way, for people should check out your Reason to Resist. 2 is number 2. Reason to Resist with Dimitri Lascaris on YouTube. Your coverage in Iran, I think, went pretty viral. You should post that video of you crying that went on national TV in Iran. I'd love to see it. As part of footage of one of your videos, but also your visit to the Crete base as well that you were just talking about is all on your channel that I recommend people to check out on YouTube. Press Secretary Levitt just said the president was very clear that the ceasefire is subject to the free, safe, and immediate reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. The strait is still closed. Explosions across Iran where air defense is responding to unknown drones. There weren't airstrikes. Thank heavens. I was seriously worried that Trump had started to attack Iran again. Fine. Oh, sorry. I'm reading my own comments. So, someone wrote my comment from my team. A reporter asked Trump if he wants the U.S. to start earning revenue by charging tolls on the Strait of Hormuz. Levitt is like, it's an idea the president has floated, and it will continue to be discussed over the next 2 weeks. Would you give Trump his flowers if he manages to get a cut out of the Strait of Hormuz? Would you give him his flowers?
Would he take them? I don't know.
I don't think he'll take them unless they're golden flowers. But honestly, from a business perspective, that would be insane. That would be a hell of a deal for Trump and the US. Israel would die. Israel would lose its shit.
Absolutely. I mean, any part of this deal would cause Israel to lose its shit.
We could be seeing a new Middle East. Sorry, I was going to say one quick comment is that we could. Me and Malcolm is, we spoke for like 2 hours yesterday. He's going to come on the show in a few minutes as well. He said, Mario, and I want to get your thoughts on a comment. He said, Mario, the Middle East will never be the same again. It's a comment I say as well. Will never look the same. Israel's power has been greatly diminished. The Gulf are in a very tricky position. Iran is going to be a superpower again, assuming it wasn't one already, but it's going to be an economic superpower as well. If the sanctions are lifted and Iran has temporary or permanent, but I think more temporary control of the Strait of Hormuz, maybe even permanent. Militarily, they can control it, so permanent. Iran will become bigger than Saudi potentially, or will become Israel, Saudi, and Iran. That will be the 3 tripolar world, if that's a word.
Oh, I completely concur with your and his assessment. 100%. The status quo is gone. That world ain't coming back. No goddamn way. And having driven around Iran, Mario, I don't think that the Saudis will be able to compete with Iran if this deal is done. This country is massive. From a population perspective, it's much bigger than Iran. The territory, the diversity, the resources of this country, the water resources, the agricultural land, it has so much that the Saudis don't have, so much that the Israelis don't have, that if this country is allowed to flourish economically, it's given the freedom to develop as its government sees fit. It will be a regional superpower, and nobody in the region is going to be able to contest Iran's power. Nobody.
My worry, Dimitri, a country you've been to a lot and you know well is Lebanon. My worry is that this is the end of the potential for Lebanon to do well. I'll tell you why. I think Iran may care for Lebanon. Israel may care for Lebanon. I'll just go with it. I know that people probably go up in arms if I say Israel cares about Lebanon, but just go with it. They might care, but both countries, the US might care for Lebanon. Syria might care for Lebanon. Syria's invaded Lebanon. Israel's invaded Lebanon. Iran has a proxy in Lebanon. The US meddles in Lebanon and has for decades. They all might care for Lebanon, but that's how much they care. America's America first. Iran's Iran first. Israel's Israel first. And Syria's Syria first. Syria's barely surviving. And Lebanon is stuck in the middle. And if Hezbollah remains, I'm not saying they shouldn't or shouldn't. I don't think they should, but put that aside. If Hezbollah remains, which I think is a fact now, Iran getting out of this war as it's looking right now, there is no way Hezbollah is going to go away anytime soon. If anything, they're going to probably become stronger than ever. Some people may see this as a good thing, as a deterrent to Israel. And they may be right, because I don't know what Israel's ambitions are, especially after the statement from the defense minister. But it will essentially cement Lebanon's position as a proxy battlefield. It's already been one for so many years. Hezbollah and Mustaqbal and Lebanese forces and Tayyar and all of them have affiliations with Saudi, Turkey to a lesser extent, with Syria, with Israel, but very indirectly, with the US, with Iran as a big one. And they're all trying to have more influence. What's leading to the country fracturing? And when a country is a battlefield, a proxy battlefield, it's going to destroy the country. So Iran's going to increase its, Hezbollah has assassinated a lot of leaders in the country. Other people have assassinated Hezbollah leaders in the country over the years, depending who was stronger. Syria's assassinated leaders. Israel's assassinated probably more than anyone. And Iran has through Hezbollah. So if you put all this together, Hezbollah surviving will guarantee Lebanon to not do well economically, because Israel will not accept it. Saudi will keep wanting to increase its influence there, and Iran will have a much bigger influence now after this ceasefire. And I worry that the biggest loser is going to be Lebanon. What do you think?
My friend, I'm sorry to say that Lebanon is in dire straits and has been for some time. The situation looks grim, and far be it from me to tell the Lebanese people how they should deal with the many challenges confronting them, but size matters. And the borders of this region were drawn by colonial powers in order to weaken states like Lebanon and ensure a permanent state of weakness. And I think probably the best outcome, again, if I were advising Lebanese, it's hard, not up to me to dictate anything. They should think about a redrawing of the borders that incorporates them into a larger state that can defend itself, which would include but not be limited to Syria. I think that that's the best hope for Lebanon's security. But this may not be something that the Lebanese people want. I know that there is a significant proportion of the population that does want that. I met people in Lebanon in my trips, who feel that way and feel that it was a great injustice that must be rectified, the division of the borders of this region, according to Sykes-Picot. But if Lebanon remains so small and isolated, not able to share a border with states that are allied to it and so forth, it's going to be constantly subjected to the brutality of Israel, constantly under economic coercion, constantly divided internally because of ethnic and religious differences. So I think the best hope is to redraw the borders of the region. And that should be done anyways, for a whole bunch of reasons, not just because of Israel. There was a poll done, I remember, I can't remember the exact the polling station, the polling firm that did it, or the year, but it was back in it was like 100 years ago, something like that, 80 years ago, which asked the people of the region what they wanted, and a large majority wanted all of those countries into one larger, greater Syria. That was the popular sentiment amongst people living in the region before it was carved up.
Remember, Syria invaded Lebanon for a long time. As a final comment, I'm going to put my thoughts. I wrote it as we're speaking. R.I.P. Lebanon. If Hezbollah survives, which it will, and becomes stronger than it has been for years, I think anyone that likes Lebanon, anyone that likes Iran and Hezbollah should be celebrating right now. Depending what happens Friday and afterwards, because the ceasefire could collapse by the time I finish this stream. But it is an incredible win for them. anyway, I said, and I think Lebanon, did a post. I got a lot of hate for it, like every post I do, but it's Lebanon's the biggest loser of this war, because I think, as I said, it's going to continue being a proxy battlefield. Israel's just decimated it. There's many other losers, Israel being one of them, the US being another, less so, the Gulf being losers, again, less so than even Israel, but nothing compares to Lebanon. Yeah, and so then Lebanon will remain a proxy battlefield where Iran, Israel, Saudi, and many other countries use it to advance their interests, keeping the country in a state of chaos, in a perpetual state of chaos. Last question I have for you, Dimitri, is NATO. So Trump put out a statement now saying, Trump on NATO, they were tested and they failed. Is NATO in jeopardy after all this? Because Trump seems really pissed they didn't help him. He's been pissed about them even before all this. What do you think of the future of NATO? Is it going to be impacted after all this, or this is all theatrics?
Well, it was already hanging by a thread, NATO, as a result of the Ukraine war. And this, look, I come from a country that is a NATO member. It is has committed to
Cyprus,
spend 5% of GDP.
Greece or Cyprus?
Both Greece and Canada. I'm a citizen of both countries.
Oh, Canada, sorry, yeah, Canada, yeah.
And they both made this commitment, and they're both going to be radically altered by this commitment. And many of the social programs that Canadians and Greeks have become accustomed to are going to be eviscerated. These countries are going to fall further into debt. Greece is particularly vulnerable because it has the second highest debt to GDP ratio in the world. Yeah. Only Japan has a bigger one. And so we right now haven't really felt the effects of in NATO of this extraordinary commitment to military spending, this insane, this fiscally ruinous commitment. But as the bill begins to be paid, and the cost in terms of our social safety net, the things that we've come to rely upon to have a decent lifestyle in the West, it becomes increasingly apparent to the population. The level of hostility to NATO is going to grow enormously, and there's already a significant degree of skepticism. So just on that basis alone, I think that NATO has a grim future, and it's been exposed as a paper tiger, as Andriy Martyanov says every opportunity he has. It has expended huge amounts of munitions. It has lost war after war. It has left devastation in its wake. Personally, speaking for myself, I don't think they could kill NATO fast enough. This is a pox on the face of humanity, and we need to bring it to an end once and for all. So I hope that Trump does kill it. I really do.
A big news as we wrap up and we get Malcolm Nance on. Breaking: Iran's parliament speaker issues a statement on the US and Israeli violation of Iran's 10-point plan. The statement concludes, in such situation, a bilateral ceasefire or negotiations are unreasonable. And the Kataib of Hezbollah, whatever you call it in Iraq, has announced that they will continue their operations. They said just now, where is the statement? Just came in as we were speaking. Since the enemy is treacherous and violates the agreement with Iran, the Islamic resistance in Iraq will return to discipline him and make him regret it. Akram al-Kabi, Secretary General of the Iraqi Harakat al-Nujaba.
Bye-bye ceasefire.
Bye-bye ceasefire. Let me do a tweet. RIP ceasefire. Dimitri, I know we've gone past the time. I appreciate staying a bit over time. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to have you. And keep doing the great work, man, on your channel. Really enjoying watching the videos. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
We've got Malcolm Nance joining us now, our regular, as kind of a final recap of everything, because that's pretty significant. The ceasefire is just dead. I don't know what... For now, the ceasefire just got killed. Yep, RIP ceasefire. Yeah. All right, guys, everyone. I'm going to get Malcolm out, and he'll be coming on in a couple of minutes. Let me see how many minutes. 4 minutes he'll be coming on. But we've got a statement now. Let me read out the full statement by the Speaker of the Parliament of Iran. There it is. Statement on the violation of 3 key clauses on the 10-point proposal agreed framework from the start of the negotiations. The deep historical distrust we hold towards the United States stems from its repeated violations of all forms of commitment, a pattern that has regrettably been repeated once again. As the President of the United States has clearly stated in his truth, the Islamic Republic of Iran's 10-point proposal is a, quote, workable basis on which negotiations in Iran is the framework for these talks. However, 3 clauses of the proposal have been violated so far. Non-compliance with the first clause, of the 10-point proposal regarding the ceasefire in Lebanon, a commitment that Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif has also explicitly referred to and declared as an immediate ceasefire everywhere, including Lebanon and other regions, effective immediately. Israel just killed the ceasefire. Israel just killed the ceasefire. Number 2, the entry of an intruding drone into Iranian airspace, which was destroyed in the city of Lar in Pars province, in clear violation of the clause prohibiting any further violation of Iran airspace. Guys, you fucking struck the Gulf. Maybe own up to that at least. Denial of Iran's right to enrichment, which was included in the 6th clause of the framework. Now, the very, quote, the very workable basis of which to negotiate, quote, has been openly and clearly violated even before the negotiations began. In such situation, a bilateral ceasefire negotiations is unreasonable. What do you want me to say, guys? Beirut is getting bombed as we speak. The Israel killed Israel successfully killed the ceasefire. You know, I change my mind if I get more information that proves otherwise. That's exactly what we're seeing right now. Let me give you guys an update on all the statements and stuff, but this is the most significant. And the statement from the militia in Iraq, the proxy, the Iranian proxy, that said the same thing. So they've coordinated it. All right, let me give you some updates. So we got the statement here from the speaker, statement from the Iranian parliamentary speaker. In the meantime, we've got statements from Caroline Levitt, which just repeats what Trump said, what Netanyahu said, that Lebanon's not part of the ceasefire. You should see the footage I'm watching now. I'll play it to you guys in a bit. She also said Trump will discuss the possibility of the US leaving NATO with the Secretary General later today. Reporters, why would the US allow Iran to collect tolls? Levitt, that's not something we're definitely accepted. The joint venture is just an idea and the president has floated. I thought Trump wanted a free access to the Strait. So yeah, it's about having joint access to the Strait of Hormuz. Levitt, the president was very clear that this ceasefire is subject to the free, safe, and immediate reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Also from Levitt, it's an idea the president has floated that's about being part of the toll system that Iran is going to have and earning a part of it. And it will continue to be discussed over the next 2 weeks. We're on such different pages, different pages between the US and Iran and Israel. It just seems like a deal was done yesterday. It was done without, Trump really wanted to end the war. It was done out of desperation. And Israel was not consulted. As we saw in the reports, Israel was caught by surprise. They were told before we found out, even probably before I found out, before it was public. And they immediately struck Iran as they found out, because they struck Iran really hard. I think they struck them in the Pars gas field right before the ceasefire was announced. Fact check me on that one. But Israel was surprised with it. And over this, Trump went to bed, woke up. Israel has a whole campaign, a pressure campaign against Trump to keep Lebanon out of the ceasefire. Trump caved. He said, all right, Lebanon is going to be outside the ceasefire. In the meantime, Malcolm, my team just told me Malcolm's being set up now. He'll be up any minute. In the meantime, Lebanon's getting pummeled. So Netanyahu left no choice but to Trump. We're going to pummel. It reminds me of the threat that, I can't remember who was talking, the Secretary General of NATO, I think, was talking about, or Trump's defense secretary or whoever, I can't remember who it was, but talked about how Israel was threatening to drag Obama into a war with Iran, saying we're going to strike Iran with or without you, something along those lines. And we're seeing the same thing here. They're striking Lebanon even without consulting the US, even though Lebanon was part of the 10-point peace plan. And who suffers? Obviously Lebanon, but Trump's entire efforts to end the war has suffered. They're very good at doing what they do at the detriment of everyone else. So I don't know what's happening behind the scenes right now. I do not think Trump will cave, though. I think This is Iran telling Trump, hey, this is a red line for us. Trump is testing Iran on whether they would accept to leave Lebanon out of it. As I said, Iran is in a very strong position. They will not abandon Lebanon as they may have before. Some people say they have, some people say they haven't. They won't now. They're stronger than they've ever been. They will not abandon Hezbollah. So once Trump knows that Iran is not budging, the only solution is to force Netanyahu to budge. And I think Netanyahu will budge. Otherwise, I'd be questioning a lot of my assumptions on Israeli influence in the US, Trump administration, Trump's personality, etc. Let me see if there's more updates from the team now on the comments of the ceasefire from Iran. Hold on, let me see if there's anything else here coming out. All right, there's no other updates beyond this statement. So there could be a preemptive strike from Israel. So that's an important point they just mentioned to me. There's going to be a meeting with the military officials and Netanyahu tonight, and they'll be discussing a potential preemptive strike against Iran because Iran threatened to retaliate against the heavy bombing that is ongoing in Lebanon right now. So the only question is, will the US stand by? Because the US could stand by. Iran's not retaliating against the US or Gulf. There's another option right here. They continue discussing the ceasefire, but Israel has agency to decide what to do in Lebanon and face the consequences. And if Israel decides to keep striking Lebanon, Israel will keep getting struck by Iran. Do they have enough air defense munitions to withstand those attacks? So there is another possibility here. One is, I think the two possibilities I think are plausible. One, Trump forces Netanyahu's hand and Netanyahu capitulates, and that's number one. Number two is Trump abandons Netanyahu. I've posted about this before the deal a couple of days ago. I said Trump could just walk away from all this, let the rest of the world clean up the Strait of Hormuz, which is happening right now, Iran putting a toll system, and let Israel deal with Iran and decide what to do with Lebanon. If Israel want to keep getting bombed by Iran in return to invade South Lebanon and keep bombing Lebanon and Hezbollah, so be it. This is Israel's decision, and they have a right to decide. Now, how much will the US support them in that regard? I don't think it's that much. I think we could start seeing the decoupling of the US and Israel. A lot of people are talking about a decoupling between the Gulf and Gulf and Iran, which could happen. I think the more likely decoupling we're going to see is between the US and Israel. Let me see what other updates there is for you guys. On the let me know in the comments as well where you stand. The team is sending me some updates, some comments as well to answer questions or give me your thoughts as well. But let me play this footage. Let me send it to you, Lisa. Can you play this footage while you're setting up Malcolm? We're trying to fix out his internet. Play this, Lisa, just to give you an idea of what's happening in Lebanon right now. I'm not going to talk about NATO as well because a lot of people are asking about NATO and the future of NATO. I think there's something more important right now than NATO and the future of NATO. I think this is more theatrics. Let's just figure out what's going to happen in Iran. Is there a possibility that the Seoul ceasefire collapses and we're back to the war as it was before this? Possible, but unlikely. I don't think this war will continue without the US. Iran has shown us since the beginning of the war that they don't want a war with the US. They don't mind a war with Israel. They prefer without it, but they don't want a war with the US. Now, they don't mind a war with the US, but they're salivating for a war with Israel. A lot of people in the IRGC, because they feel that could hurt Israel, significantly hurt Israel. We know they have a lot of missile launchers left. Israel has, according to Channel 12, Israel has said they cannot destroy Iranian missiles and missile launchers that are underground, deep underground. They cannot reach them. They came out a few days ago. That's Beirut, by the way, guys. It's just now. That's not from the morning. No, that's from the morning. Sorry, yeah, that's the one from the morning. Look at look what they've done to the country. And then you expect people to rally against Hezbollah when there's fucking atrocities like this. Yeah. All right, I'm just getting a confirmation now from Malcolm. Give me 2 seconds, guys. All right, we'll let you know in 1 to 2 minutes. We'll get a confirmation on Malcolm. They're just sorting out his internet. I'll give you a kind of final statement as well on what I think is going to happen next. So there is people I speak to behind the scenes, as you guys all know. And that's how we knew about the peace deal an hour before anyone else. And one thing that's true that it's all reported. A lot of people don't know what is happening in those negotiations. Like I got that message that was even vague, the one I posted about before the ceasefire. It was a vague message from someone part of the negotiations, and that message was vague. And then we see comments from Trump that are different to Netanyahu, that are different to the prime minister, the mediator, the prime minister of a country, of a superpower, of a nuclear armed superpower. Nawaz Sharif made a statement that Trump saying, no, that's lying. So Trump literally, who was praising Nawaz Sharif, this is so obvious that the deal included Lebanon, and the US is lying about it. It's so obvious for anyone that follows it. But the problem is most people don't follow this stuff. Most people are too busy paying their bills and studying whatever and focusing on things that are more interesting than politics. They don't understand what happened behind the scenes. They think Lebanon was never part of the plan. They don't know that the mediator, the prime minister of another country, confirmed what Iran has said is that was part of the plan. And Trump confirmed it indirectly by saying there's a 10-point peace plan right after Iran, or at the same time as Iran released their 10-point peace plan. So what's happened is the following. There was a 10-point peace plan. They've agreed on it. Iran did not trust the US because they knew Israel could. Let me find you that comment by Arachi. But Arachi made a comment. It's going to take me a while to find it. But in his statement, he said Israel's going to drag Lebanon. Is that going to drag the? There it is. Well, I was found it pretty quickly. He quote tweeted the Prime Minister of Pakistan, and he said the Iran-US ceasefire terms are clear and explicit. The US must choose ceasefire or continued war via Israel. It cannot have both. The world sees the massacres in Lebanon. The ball is in the US court, and the world is watching whether it will act on its commitments. So this is, he didn't blame Israel as much as I would have expected, but this is Arachi indirectly saying that Lebanon is the issue, and the only country that wants to bomb Lebanon is Israel. So I don't know if you can have it any clearer than that, but this is where we are. We're going to have Malcolm Nance coming on the show. We're going to do it later today. He's having internet issues, so I'm going to wrap this up, get a quick coffee. Got a quick, no coffee at this time, a bit too late, quick drink. I'll keep updating. Have a whole team posting on X, and keep doing interviews for you guys, keep you educated and informed and exposed to both sides of everything. You know, I spoke to Eylon Levy from Israel, who's obviously very critical of Hezbollah, Iran, etc., has his own opinions, and I've spoken to someone like Dimitri, who was in Iran just a few days ago, and I have military experts like Malcolm Nance, who will be joining us later today, and Trita Parsi, who's an expert in Iran, who knows Iran very well, has been covering it almost all his life. So now I'll keep doing my best. I hope you guys enjoy the content and the different viewpoints that you get and the summaries that we do. And if you want the latest updates, we're pulsing pretty much everything on X, including my opinions now. I've become a lot more vocal to kind of give you my thoughts, and you'll see my opinions shift. So I get, if you guys follow me on X, a lot of people criticize me, like, Mario, why are you criticizing Iran, but at the same time you want the war to stop, but you don't like Iran? I'm like, yes, I don't like the regime, but I want the war to stop. Mario, why do you want Hezbollah to stop, but you also want Israel to stop their genocide or whatever, their occupation? I didn't say genocide for Lebanon, their occupation or invasion. I'm like, yes, because I think Hezbollah is bad for Lebanon, but Israel's also bad for Lebanon. So I'll always try to be as nuanced as possible, and I'll change my mind as I get more information. I don't like to be bogged down in any echo chamber or be thrown in any bucket. But everyone, thank you so much for joining. I'll see you in a bit with Malcolm Nance. Bye-bye.